chapters 13 through 18 of the Book of Ezekiel, from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 13. The command of the Lord came to me again to say, Son of Adam, preach against the preachers of Israel, and say to the preachers of their own inventions, Listen to the message of the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord to the wicked preachers who follow their own invention and see nothing. Your preachers, Israel, are like foxes in the ruins. They have not mounted to the breaches. They have not defended the walls for the house of Israel, standing in the battle in the day of the ever-living. You see deception and divine a lie, crying, Thus says the Lord, when the ever-living has not sent you, while they hoped for a reliable messenger. Have you not invented a false vision and divined a lying tale when you asserted, The ever-living says, and I never spoke? Therefore thus says the mighty Lord, because you speak falsehood and invent a lie, I am absolutely opposed to you, says the mighty Lord. My hand will be against the preachers of false visions and the diviners of a lie. They shall not come to the council of my people, nor be recorded in the records of the house of Israel, nor shall they arrive at the soil of Israel, until they learn that I am the ever-living. Because they have deluded my people by exclaiming, Peace, when there was no peace, and build that as a fence, and then daubed it with mortar. Say to the mortar daubers, It will fall. A swishing shower will come, and I will send flinging hailstones, and a raging, tearing wind when the wall will fall. Then will they not ask you, Where is the daub you daubed upon it? However, the mighty Lord says this, I will smash it by a wind in my fury, and a sweeping rain shall come in my anger, and hailstones in my indignation to destroy, and break the wall down that you daubed with mortar, and break it to the earth, and bare its foundations, and it shall fall with you under it. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living. Thus I will satisfy my indignation against the wall, and those who daubed it with mortar, when I ask you, Where is the wall, and where is its daubing? You preachers of Israel who preach to Jerusalem and view visions of peace for her, when there is no peace, says the ever-living. But you, son of Adam, set your face against the daughters of your people, the preacheresses out of their own invention, and preach against them and say, Thus says the mighty Lord. Woe to the sewers of pillows to the sides of their arms, who put cushions of all heights on their heads to hunt souls, the hunted souls of my people, and living souls for yourselves. And you have degraded me to my people for handfuls of barley and bits of bread, to kill the souls who would not have died, and to revive the souls that ought not to be revived, for your lies, by my people listening to your lies. Therefore thus says the mighty Lord, I am against the pillows that you hunt the flying souls with, and will tear them off from your arms, and liberate the souls you hunt, the flying souls. So I will tear the pillows, and deliver my people from your hands, and they shall be no more in your favor to be hunted. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living, although you grieved the right-hearted by falsehood, when I had not made them sad, and encouraged the wicked not to turn from his wicked way of life. Therefore you shall not again have sham visions and divinations, for I will deliver my people from your hands. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living. Chapter 14. Once some of the men from the nobles of Israel came and sat before me, when the ever-living commanded me to say, Son of Adam, these men have erected idols in their hearts, and put the block of their passions before their face. Ought they to inquire of me? Therefore speak to them and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, to every one of the house of Israel who sets up his idols in his heart, and puts the block of his passions before his face, and comes to the prophet, I, the ever-living, will answer him about it by his numerous idols, so that I may catch the house of Israel in their hearts, where they have separated themselves from me for their numerous idols. Therefore say to the house of Israel, Thus says the mighty Lord, Turn, turn from your idols, and from all your depravities, turn your faces. For every one of the house of Israel and of the foreigners who reside with Israel, who has separated himself from following me, and has set up idols in his heart, and placed the block of his passions before his face, yet come to the preacher for him to inquire of me, I, the ever-living, will answer him for myself, and set my face against that man, and set him for a wonder and proverb, and an outcast from my people. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living. And if the preacher misleads when delivering a command, I, the ever-living, have not misled that preacher. So I will then extend my hand to him and desolate him among my people Israel. Thus they will bear their fault. Both the preacher and inquirer will be alike, so that the house of Israel may no more be deluded by seductions, and no more defile itself by all their wickedness, but may become my people, and I become their God, says the mighty Lord. The command of the ever-living also came to me to say, Son of Adam, when a country sins against me very perversely, and I stretch my hand against it, and break from it the staff of bread, and send it famine, and cut off from it men and cattle, if these 3 men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they might deliver their own lives by their goodness, says the mighty Lord. If I sent savage beasts upon a country, and it is desolated so that no one crosses it because of the beasts, if these 3 men were in it, by my life, said the mighty Lord, they should preserve neither sons nor daughters. They should only preserve themselves, and the country should become desolate. Or if I bring a sword against that country, and cut off from it men and cattle, and have said to the sword, Pass over the land, and cut off from it men and cattle, although these 3 men were in it, by my life, says the mighty Lord, they should not preserve sons nor daughters, but only preserve themselves. Or if I send a disease to that country, and pour out my indignation upon it in blood, to cut men and cattle off from it, although Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, by my life, said the mighty Lord, they should not preserve sons or daughters by their goodness, they might preserve their own lives. Then, thus said the mighty Lord, what will it be when I send my 4 great judgments, plague, the sword, and famine, and beasts against Jerusalem, to cut off from it men and cattle? A portion, however, of her sons and daughters shall escape as fugitives. They shall come out to you, and you can see their ways and proceedings, and console them about all the suffering that I brought upon Jerusalem, all that I brought on her. They will also console you when they see your ways and proceedings, and you will learn that I have not done to her what I did causelessly, the mighty Lord said. Chapter 15. The message of the ever-living came again to me, asking, Son of Adam, what is done with the vine among the trees, the branch that was with the trees of the forest? Is wood taken from it to make anything for use? They take none of it except to hang something upon. Both ends of it are put in the fire to be consumed. The fire will devour the middle of it. Is it useful for working? Indeed, when it was perfect, it could not be made of use. How then, when the fire has consumed and burnt, can it be made into anything? Therefore, thus said the mighty Lord, like the vine among the trees of the forest, which they put upon the fire to be consumed, so I will put the population of Jerusalem, and set my face against them. They have groaned for the fire, and the fire shall consume them. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living, when I turn my face against them, and make the country a waste because of their perversity, the mighty Lord said. Chapter 16. The message of the ever-living came again to me to say, Son of Adam, inform Jerusalem of her depravities, and proclaim, Thus says the mighty Lord to Jerusalem, By origin and race you are of the land of Canaan, your father an Amorite, and your mother a Hittite. And at your nativity, on the day of your birth, your navel was not cut, nor were you washed clean with water, nor salted with salt, nor swathed with bandages. No, I pitied you to do any of these to you, from affection for you, but you were flung on the surface of the earth, an outcast life on the day of your birth. I, however, passed near you and saw you wallowing in your blood, and said to you in your bleeding, Live, and repeated to you when bleeding, Live. Then I made you grow like the plants of the field, and you flourished and grew up and became very beautiful. Your breasts developed, and your hair grew, and you were a beauty of beauties, yet you were naked and bare. But I passed by you and looked at you and saw yours was the time for lovers, so I threw my cloak over you and covered your nakedness, and made you a promise, and produced a contract to you, says the mighty Lord, and you became mine. Then I washed you in water and swept your blood from you, and refreshed you with oil, and clothed you in embroidery, and shod you with sealskin, and girdled you with muslin, robed you in silk, and adorned you with jewelry, and put bracelets on your wrists, and a collar on your neck. I also put a locket on your brow, and earrings on your ears, and a beautiful turban on your head, and ornaments of gold and silver, and your clothing was fine muslin, and silk, and embroidery. And I fed you with fine flour, and honey, and oil, and you were very beautiful, and you grew to be a queen. Then your fame for beauty went out to the nations, for it was perfect from my majesty that I had put upon you, said the mighty Lord. You, however, relied upon your beauty, and whored upon your fame, and poured out your fornication to every traveler who might come. And you took your robes, and made yourself luxurious couches, and fornicated upon them, without payment or fee. You also took your beautiful jewels, my gold and my silver, which I had given to you, and made yourself forms like males, and fornicated with them, and took your bordered robes, and covered them, and put my oil and my incense before them, and my bread of fine flour, oil, and honey, which I had given you to eat, you placed before them for a dainty, and it was a dainty, says the mighty Lord. And you took your sons and your daughters, whom you had borne to me, and have sacrificed them to be devoured. Were your whoredoms nothing, but that you must murder my children, and give them to be passed round as food? And in all your depravities and all your whoredoms, have you not remembered the days of your youth, when you were naked and bare, and were wallowing in your blood? But now, after all your wickedness, woe, woe to you, says the mighty Lord. You have built yourself a mound, and made yourself an erection in every square, and at the top of every street you have constructed couches, and prostituted your beauty, and spread your legs for every passenger, and increased your whoredoms. You have also fornicated with the big-bodied sons of the Mizraim, your neighbors, and multiplied your whoredoms to provoke me. So now I have extended my hand against you, and will diminish your allowance, and give you to the will of your haters, the daughters of the Philistines. Will they shame you from your vile ways? You also whored with Ashur, but were not satiated. Then whored with them again, and were not satiated. Then you extended your fornications to the land of merchants, the Kasdim, but even by that you were not satiated. Why, your heart should have been sick, says the mighty Lord, at your doing all these things, the acts of an impudent, whorish woman, at your building mounds at the top of every road, and making your erections in every square. And you were not like a harlot, for you scorned pay. You were an adulterous wife, taking strangers instead of her husband. They give pay to every prostitute, but you gave pay to your lovers, and bribed them to come to you from round about to whore you. And you are different to other women with your whoremongers. They do not follow you to fornicate, but you give them pay, and they give not pay to you, so you are different. Therefore, harlot, hear the message of the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord, because your filth was poured out, and your nakedness uncovered, for your fornications with your lovers, and for all your depraved idols, and because of the blood of your children who were given to them, I will in consequence collect all your paramours with whom you luxuriated, and all whom you have loved with all whom you hated. I will collect them against you from around, and strip your shame before them, and they shall see your shame. Then I will punish you with the punishment that adulteresses and murderesses are punished with, and shed your blood with indignation and contempt. Yes, I will put you in their power, and they will overturn your mounds, and throw down your erections, and strip off your clothes, and seize your beautiful jewels, and make you sit naked and bare. Then I will bring a mob about you, and they will kill you by stoning, and hack you with their swords, and burn your houses with fire, and execute justice upon you in the sight of a crowd of women, when you will cease from your whoredom, and never again give your payments. That is how I will gratify my indignation upon you. Then my rage will turn from you, and I can rest and be no more provoked, because you did not remember the days of your youth, but irritated me by all those things. Consequently, I will put your habit on your head, says the mighty Lord. For have you not practiced this vice beyond all your depravities? Look, everyone can repeat this proverb against you, like mother, like daughter. You are your mother's daughter. She loathed her husband and children, and the sister of your sisters, they loathed their husbands and their children. Their mother was a Hittite, and their father an Amorite. Your elder sister is Shomeron, and her daughters who sit at your left. And your younger sister is Sodom, and her daughters who sit at your right. And have you not walked on their road? And as they did, and as they depraved themselves, have not you done? That was little, for you corrupted yourself more than they in every way. By my life, says the mighty Lord, Sodom, your sister, she and her daughters did not do what you and your daughters have done. Look, this was the fault of Sodom, your sister. Pride, gluttony, and careless ease were hers and her daughters, and that she did not support the house of the poor and wretched. They were also haughty and practiced depravity before me, so I swept them away as you have seen. And Shomeron did not sin half your sins, for you increased your depravities more than her, and you have made an excuse for your sister by all the depravities you have practiced. So hear your own disgrace, since you blamed your sisters about your own sins in which you have depraved yourself. They were more excusable than you. However, be ashamed of yourself and bear your infamy by the excuse you have made for your sisters. So I will turn away the slavery of the slaves of Sodom and her daughters, and the slavery of Shomeron and her daughters, and the slavery of your slaves amongst them, so that you may bear infamy and be ashamed of all that you have done to excuse them. Your sister Sodom, however, and her daughters were captured first. Then Shomeron and her daughters were captured in anticipation, and now your daughters are captured previous to yourself. But yet your sister Sodom was not heard of from your mouth in the day of your pride, before your vices were discovered, at the time of the insult to the daughters of Aram and her neighbors, the daughters of the Philistine, who were flogged around you for the wickedness and depravities you yourself possessed, the ever-living says. Therefore, the mighty Lord says it, I have done to you as you have done, as you treated your oath with contempt and broke the contract. However, I will call to mind my contract with you in the days of your youth, and make a lasting contract with you, when you reflect on your ways and your infamy during your marriage, along with your elder sister and your younger, and I will give them to you for attendance, but not for your control. Thus I will settle a contract with you when you learn that I am master, so that you may reflect and be ashamed, and never again make for yourself an open path for your infamy, after I have forgiven you for all you have done, says the mighty Lord. Chapter 17. Again the message of the ever-living came to me, saying, Son of Adam, make a puzzle and an enigma about the house of Israel, and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, There was a great eagle with big, strong, spreading wings, full of variegated feathers, who came to Lebanon and seized his cedar boughs, the topmost shoots, broke them off, and carried them to the land of trade, planting them in the town of merchants. He also took some of the seed from that country and sowed it on a seed field near plenty of water. He planted it like a willow, and it grew and became like a luxuriant vine, low in height, with branches twisting on themselves. and its roots were under it. Thus it became a vine, and produced and sent out shoots. But there was another great eagle with big wings and many feathers. And you see this vine turned its roots towards him, and sent out branches for him to water it on the open field by plenty of water, where it was set to produce grapes, to bear fruit, and be a glorious vine. Ask this, said the mighty Lord, will it prosper? Will he not cut off its roots, shoots, and fruit, and make all its flourishing leaves wither, even without a strong arm or many people to pull it up from the roots? So look, having been planted, will it prosper? Will it not at the approach of the east wind wither on the bed where it grows? Again the message of the ever-living came to me to say, Ask the rebellious family, do you not know what this thing means? You saw the king of Babel came to Jerusalem, and he took its king and princes and brought them with him to Babel. Then he took some of the royal family and made a treaty with it and brought it to the oath, and took the nobles from the country so that the kingdom might be depressed and unable to rise and be kept standing by the treaty. It, however, revolted from it by sending ambassadors to Mitzer to give it cavalry and a great army. Having done this, will it prosper and escape? And having broken the treaty, can it escape? By my life, says the mighty Lord, in the house of the king who made him king, in which he is a captive, and where he has broken the treaty, in the country of Babel, he shall die. Nor shall Pharaoh succeed with him in the war by his great force or numerous army, by heaping up embankments or building ramparts and destroying many lives, although he despised the oath and broke the treaty. Be sure, although he has given his hand and done all this, he shall not escape. The mighty Lord therefore says this, I will bring my oaths that he has despised and my treaty that he has broken on his own head, and spread my net over him. Yes, I will lay my snare and bring him to Babel and condemn him there for all that he has wronged me. And all his flying troops shall fall by the sword, and the remnants be scattered to the winds. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living who has said it. Thus says the mighty Lord, I also will take a branch of a tall cedar and plant it. From the top of its twigs I will pluck a tender shoot and plant it on a high and noble hill. I will plant it on the highest hill of Israel, where it will shoot up boughs and produce fruit, and become a glorious cedar. And birds of every kind will fix their homes in the shadow of its branches. Then all the trees of the field will learn that I, the ever-living, have depressed the lofty tree and exalted the lowly tree, have exhausted the vigorous tree and made the dry tree flourish, that I, the ever-living, have promised and done it. Chapter 18. The command of the ever-living again came to me to ask, What do you mean quoting this proverb in the land of Israel, which says, The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge? By my life, says the mighty Lord, you need never again quote that proverb in Israel. Look, all persons are mine. Both the person of the Father and the person of the Son are mine. Therefore the sinning person shall die. So the man who may be good and practice justice and goodness, who does not sacrifice on the hills, and does not lift up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, and does not corrupt the wife of his neighbor, and has not approached a woman under a vow, who has not oppressed anyone by extortion, has returned the debtor his pledge, has not robbed, has given the hungry his bread, and clothed the naked, who has not lent on usury and has not exacted exorbitant interest, who has turned his hand from evil and has practiced justly and truly between man and man, who has followed my institutions and kept my decrees and done truly and rightly, he shall possess life, says the mighty Lord. But should he beget a son who is a bloodshedder, or does exactly contrary to the above, or does not practice any of them, but who sacrifices on the hills and corrupts the wife of his neighbor, who oppresses the poor and wretched, steals as a thief, does not restore the pledge to his debtor, and lifts up his eyes to idols to practice depravity, who lends on usury and exacts exorbitant interest, he then shall not live. Having practiced the whole of these villainies, he shall die, his blood shall be upon him. But should he beget a son who sees all the sins that his father has practiced, and reflects and does not do like them, who does not sacrifice on the hills, does not raise up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, does not corrupt his neighbor's wife, who oppresses no one, has not withheld a pledge, has not stolen like thieves, has given his bread to the hungry, and covered the naked with clothes, and turned his hand to the poor, who has not taken usury or exorbitant interest, who has practiced justice, who has followed my institutions, he shall not die for the fault of his father, he shall live. His father, because he defrauded and robbed, as above, and produced no benefit amongst his people, be sure will die for his own faults. But you may ask, why should not the son bear the faults of his father? When the son does justly and rightly, and regards all my institutions and practices them, he shall live. The sinning person himself shall die. The son shall not bear the faults of the father, and the father shall not bear the faults of the son. The goodness of the good shall be on him, and the wickedness of the wicked be upon himself. But when the wicked turns from his sin that he has done, and regards all my institutions, and practices justice and right, he shall live, not die. All the wickedness he has done will not be remembered against him, because of the goodness that he then practices. Have I any pleasure in the death of the wicked? The mighty Lord asks. I would rather he should turn from his wicked course and live. But if a good man abandons his goodness and does wrong in the manner that all the wicked are used to deprave themselves, all the righteousness which he was accustomed to will not be remembered, because of his vices that he commits and the sins he sins. He will die by them. But you may say, the course of the Almighty is not straight. Listen, however, house of Israel, if my course is not straight, are not your courses crooked? When the good man turns from his right doing and practices wickedness and dies in it, he dies wicked. And when the wicked turns from his wickedness that he was used to and does justly and rightly, that person lives by it. For he reflected and abandoned all his wickedness that he was accustomed to in his life. He will not die. Yet the house of Israel say, the course of the Almighty is not straight. House of Israel, are not your courses crooked? Consequently, I will judge you, everyone according to his ways, house of Israel, the mighty Lord declares. Change and turn yourselves from all your sins, and do not let your passions be an impediment to you. Fling all your wickedness in which you sinned from you, and make yourselves a new heart and a new spirit. For why should you die, house of Israel? For I do not delight in the death of the dying, says the mighty Lord. Therefore, turn and live. The end of chapters 13 through 18. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 19 through 24 of the Book of Ezekiel, from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 19. And you, raise a lament over the princes of Israel, and say, what was your mother? A lioness couched among lions. Among the young lions she nourished her whelps, and one of her cubs became the young lion, and learnt to tear plunder, devouring men. But the nations heard of him and caught in their pit, and they brought in a cage to the land of Mitzrayim. When she saw as she watched that her darling was gone, she selected a whelp and made him the young lion, and he marched in the midst of the lions a king, and learnt to tear plunder, devouring men. Guessed the weak ones, and ruined and ravaged the cities, and all the land rang with the sound of his roars. Then the nations came on him around from their forts, and flung on him their net, and secured in their pit, and put in a cage, and brought to Babel's king, who confined in a den, that he should not resound his voice for the future on Israel's hills. Your mother, like you, was a vigorous vine plant. Her fruit and her branches were thick from the streams, and strong stalks came from her as scepters for princes. Her height touched the clouds and showed thick leaves above. But they plucked from the ground and flung out in a fury, and her fruit is dried up by a wind from the east. Her strong shoots are withered, and fire consumed them. She now sits in a desert, a dry, thirsty ground, and fire from her stalk eats the single bunch left her. Nor comes a strong shoot for a scepter for rule. Oh, weep for her then, and let this be her dirge. Chapter 20.
It happened in the 7th year, on the 5th of the 10th month, some of the old men of Israel came to inquire of the ever-living, and sat before me. Then the message of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, speak to these old men of Israel, and say to them, Thus asks the mighty Lord, Have you come to inquire of me? By my life I will not be inquired of by you, the mighty Lord says. Judge them, son of Adam. Teach them the depravities of their fathers, and tell them, Thus says the mighty Lord. At the time I chose Israel, and lifted up my hand to the race of the house of Jacob, and disclosed myself to them in the country of the Mizraim, and lifted up my hand to them, and said, I am your ever-living God. At that time, when I raised my hand to them, to bring them from the land of the Mizraim to the country I intended for them, flowing with milk and honey, it is the most splendid of all countries, I said to each of them, Fling away the pollutions from your eyes, and do not corrupt yourselves with the idols of the Mizraim. I am your ever-living God. But they rebelled against me, and were not desirous to listen to me. Every one of them did not fling away the pollutions of his eyes, nor did they abandon the idols of the Mizraim. Therefore I threatened to pour out my indignation upon them, to assuage my anger at them in the land of the Mizraim. However, I acted because of my name, so as not to degrade it in the sight of the heathen amongst whom they were, in whose sight I discovered myself to them, and brought them out from the land of Mizar. Thus I brought them out of the country of the Mizraim, and conducted them to the desert, and gave them the institutions and decrees that I taught, which the man who practices will live by them. I also gave them my Sabbaths, to be a memorial between them and me, that I am the ever-living, their sanctuary. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the desert. They did not follow my institutions, and rejected the decrees that I had made for them, and violated my Sabbaths greatly. Therefore I threatened to pour out my wrath upon them, to destroy them in the desert. However, I worked for my name, so that it might not be degraded in the sight of the heathen in whose sight I had brought them out. Yet I lifted up my hand to them in the desert, declaring I would not bring them to the country I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, the most splendid of all lands, because they rejected my decrees and did not walk in my institutions, and profaned my Sabbaths, for they went after the idols of their hearts. However, my eye refrained from destroying, and I did not make an end of them in the desert. But I said to their children in the desert, Do not walk after the ideas of your fathers, nor follow their decisions, nor corrupt yourselves with their idols. I am your ever-living God. Walk according to my institutions, and preserve my decrees, and practice them, and sanctify my Sabbaths, and let them be a memorial between me and you, to teach you that I am your ever-living God. But the children also rebelled against me. They did not walk by my institutions, and did not preserve my decrees and practice them, which if a man practices, he will live by them. They profaned my Sabbaths. Therefore I threatened to pour my indignation upon them in the desert. However, I withdrew my hand and acted for my name, so that it might not be degraded in the sight of the heathen in whose presence I had brought them out. Yet I raised my hand to them in the desert to scatter them among the nations and to disperse them in the countries, because they had not practiced my decrees and had rejected my institutions and profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes followed the idols of their fathers. And I consequently appointed them imperfect institutions and decrees that could not give life to them. Thus I made them polluted in the gifts to themselves, in coming upon every opener of the womb, so that I might fix them, and that they might learn that I am the ever-living. Therefore, Son of man, speak to the house of Israel, and tell them, Thus says the mighty Lord, your fathers always outraged me thus, with resolute perversity. However, I brought them to the country I had raised my hand to give them, and they admired all its lofty hills and all its shady woods, and sacrificed their sacrifices there, and presented their offensive gifts, and placed there sweet perfume, and drank their drinks. But I asked them, What are these columns that you go to, and whose name is called at the column to this day? Consequently, say this to the house of Israel, Thus the mighty Lord asks, Will you corrupt yourselves in the same way as your ancestors, and fornicate as filthily as them, and offer your foul gifts to this day, in passing your children through the fire to all your idols? Why should I answer you, house of Israel? By my life, says the mighty Lord, I will not be consulted by you. Yet what arises in your mind shall not be affected when you say, We will become like the heathen, like the families of the countries, and worship wood and stone. By my life, says the mighty Lord, if I will not reign over you with a strong hand and directing arm and with pouring indignation, and bring you out from the peoples and collect you from the countries where I have scattered you with a strong hand and directing arm and pouring indignation, and bring you to the desert of the peoples and judge you there face to face, as I judged your ancestors in the desert of the land of the Mitzrayim, so I will judge you, says the mighty Lord, and pass you under the rod and bring you to the bonds of the treaty. But I will expel from you the rebels and revolters against me. I will bring them from the country where they were lodged, but they shall not enter the land of Israel. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living. But you of the house of Israel, go every one and serve his idols, and afterwards, if you will not obey me, yet do not again outrage my holy name with your gifts and your idolatries. For in my holy hill and the high mountain of Israel, says the mighty Lord, all the house of Israel will serve me perfectly in the lands of their country, and I will there demand your wavings and firstfruits and gifts with all your consecrations. I will delight in your perfumes when I bring you out from the peoples and collect from the countries where I had scattered you, and I will make my name respected through you in the sight of the heathen. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living when I have brought you to the soil of Israel, the land that I raised my hand to give to your ancestors, and you will then reflect upon your courses and all your ways by which you corrupted yourselves, and be loathsome in your own eyes, because of all the vices you have practiced. You will also recognize that I, the ever-living, work for you because of my name, not because of your vicious ways and rotten courses, house of Israel, says the ever-living. Chapter 21.
The command of the Lord came to me again to say,
Son of Adam, set your face towards Teman, and set it to the south wind, and preach against the forest of the south country, and say to the forest of the south, Listen to the message of the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord, I will light a fire in you, and devour all your green trees and every withered tree. It will burn unquenchably, and everything will be scorched before it from south to north. Then every person will learn that I, the ever-living, have kindled it unquenchably.
But I replied, ever-living, do they not say he talks in enigmas? Again the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, set your face towards Jerusalem, and let it trip to the sanctuaries, and preach against the soil of Israel, and say to the soil of Israel, Thus says the Lord, I am against you, and will draw my sword from its sheath, and cut off from you the righteous and the wicked. Then when I have cut off from you the righteous and the wicked, my sword shall proceed against every person from the south to the north, when every person will learn that I, the ever-living, having drawn my sword from its sheath, will never return it. Consequently you, son of Adam, sigh with shaking waste and bitterness, sigh in their sight. And then if they say to you, for what do you sigh? You must reply, at the report that has come. So let every heart sink, and all hands weaken, and every spirit faint, and all knees tremble like water. For the event will come to pass, says the mighty Lord.
The command of the ever-living again came to me to say,
Son of Adam, proclaim and say, thus says the ever-living. Exclaim, a sword, sharp and bright. It is sharpened for slaughter, that it may be destructive lightning, or the gleaming scepter of my son that melts every tree. It is endowed with brilliancy to be held in his hand. It is a sharp sword. It is bright. It is given to the hand of slaughter. Shriek and howl, son of Adam, for it will come to my people. It will reach all the princes of Israel. My people will be terrified by that sword. Therefore slap your thigh because of the trial. And what if even the gleaming scepter cannot endure it? The mighty Lord asks. But you, son of Adam, preach, strike hand on hand, and triplicate the sword twice. The murderous sword, the mighty murderous sword that penetrates to them. For terror of heart and the furious attacks on all their gates, I will fix the threatening sword point. I will make it like lightning flashing to slaughter. Rush to the right hand, turn to the left, come, fix your face. Yet I also will clap my hands and satisfy my indignation. I, the ever-living, have said it.
The command of the ever-living came again to me to say,
And now, son of Adam, appoint for yourself 2 ways. Sketch for yourself 2 ways for the entrance of the sword of the king of Babel. Let them both start from the same district, and when depicting it, depict a city at the end of the roads. You must depict the route of the sword to Rabbath of the Beni Ammon, and to Judah to besiege Jerusalem. Then depict the king of Babel at the head of the 2 ways, deciding which is the road to take, by the shaking of arrows, asking of the teraphim, looking at the liver. Let the decision come on his right hand for Jerusalem, to erect batteries, to break her side, to slaughter on the hills, to shout with roarings, to fix batteries against her gates, to heap up an embankment, to construct ramparts. Yet it will be a silly tale in the sight of those who swore the oaths. Yet he remembers their fault and will seize it. Therefore, thus says the mighty Lord, because you have called your fault to remembrance by publishing your sins and displaying your offenses in all your proceedings, because you have reminded about yourselves, you will be caught. But for you, wicked, wounded Prince of Israel, whose day has come with the time of this last fault, the mighty Lord declares it, I will remove your turban and take off your crown. He shall not be himself. I will throw down the high and lift up the low. Alas, alas, alas! I will overthrow this city. It shall never be revived until its rightful owner comes, when I will give it to him. For yourself, son of Adam, proclaim and say, Thus says the mighty Lord to the Beni Ammon about their disgrace, and exclaim, A sword, a naked sword to slaughter, sharpened to devour by lightning. In spite of your false visions, your lying divinations hung on your necks, when your day comes at the end of your period of sin, you poor deadly wounded wretch, put it in its sheath. I will punish you in the place where you were created, in your native land. I will punish you. I will pour out my anger upon you. I will breathe upon you in the fire of my wrath. I will give you into the power of ruffians, skillful in destruction. You shall be devoured by fire, your blood be on your land. You shall not be remembered, for I, the ever-living, declare it.
Chapter 22. The command of the ever-living came again to me to ask,
Will you now, son of Adam, judge the bloody city and teach her all her depravities? And will you say, Thus says the mighty Lord, City, you shed blood in your breast to hasten on your destiny, and you make yourselves idols to defile yourself. You shall perish in the blood that you have shed, and be defiled by the idols you have made, for you have contracted your days and brought years upon yourself. Therefore I will make you a scorn to the heathen and a derision in all countries. You shall be named Many Revolutioned. Both the near and the distant shall deride you. Look at your nobles, Israel. Each sheds blood as far as his power goes. In you they despise both father and mother. They oppress the stranger in you. In you they wrong the fatherless and the widow. You have degraded my sanctuary and profaned my Sabbaths. In you men accuse falsely to shed blood, and in you they eat sacrifices to the hills. In you they plan treachery. In you a father's shame is disclosed. In you they corrupt women bound by a vow, and each commits depravity with his neighbor's wife, and everyone devises to defile his daughter-in-law, and everyone has debauched his sister, his father's daughter in you. In you bribes are taken to shed blood. You take usury and exorbitant interest, and plunder your neighbor by extortion, and have forgotten me, says the mighty Lord. Therefore see, I have struck my hands against the plundering you have done, and at the bloodshed which exists amongst you. How can your heart stand or your hands be strong at the time when I shall deal with you? I, the ever-living, have said and will do it, that I would scatter you amongst the heathen and disperse you in the countries and eradicate your corruptions from you and make you vile to yourself in the sight of the heathen. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living.
The message of the ever-living again came to me to ask,
Son of Adam, are the house of Israel dross to me? They are all copper and tin and iron and lead in a furnace. They are the refuse of silver. Therefore thus the mighty Lord said, Because you are all dross, I will pile you into the well of Jerusalem, as silver and copper and iron and lead and tin are piled into the well of a furnace, to blow the fire over to melt them. Thus I will pile you in my indignation and fury and melt you. I will melt you thus, and blow on you with my fiery anger, and dissolve you in the well. Like silver is melted in the well of the furnace, so you shall be melted in that well, and learn that I, the ever-living, pour out my wrath upon you.
Again the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, say to her, It is a land not purified, nor rained upon in the lowering day. Her preachers conspire in her like a roaring lion desiring to tear his prey. They devour wealth, they seize riches, they have increased the destitute among you. Her priests have violated my laws and outraged my sanctuary. They do not distinguish between the consecrated and the common, and do not separate between the pure and the unclean, and have veiled their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am despised among them. Her nobles are like wolves in her breast, tearing prey and pouring out blood and destroying lives for the sake of plunder. And her preachers impel them by silly false visions and lying divinations, exclaiming, Thus says the mighty Lord, when the Lord has not spoken. They have oppressed and robbed the people of the country, and grieved the poor and distressed, and wronged the stranger, refusing justice. And I have sought for a man among them to mend the fence, and stand in the gap before me for the sake of the country, that I might not destroy it, but I found none. So I will pour out my anger upon them. In the fire of my wrath I will destroy them. On their own heads I have laid their conduct, said the mighty Lord.
Chapter 23. Again the message of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, there were 2 women, daughters of the same mother, and they prostituted themselves in Mizar in their girlhood. Their breasts were pressed there, and their virgin bosoms used, and their names were Allah and Alibah. They became my property, however, and bore sons and daughters, and the name of the daughter of Allah was Shomeron, and of Alibaz, Jerusalem. But Allah prostituted after she became mine, and doted on her paramours, on Ashur, her neighbors, who dress in blue, governors and rulers, all of them handsome young fellows, horsemen riding on horses, and gave her fornication to them. They were all the finest men of Ashur, and she doted upon them, and corrupted herself with all their idols. She did not, however, abandon her prostitutions with the Mitzrayim, who lay with her in her youth, and who used her virgin breasts, and poured their whoredom upon her. So I gave her up into the power of her paramours of Ashur, whom she doted on. They stripped her naked, they took her sons and daughters, and murdered them with the sword, and she became a reproach to their women, who executed justice upon her. And her sister Alibah saw it. She, however, doted worse than her, and prostituted herself worse than her sister. She also doted on the lads of Ashur, her neighboring governors and rulers, who were gorgeously dressed, horsemen riding on horses, all of them handsome young fellows. But I saw that she had corrupted herself, that both had gone the same way. She, however, increased her profligacy, and saw men painted on tablets, portraits of the Kasdim painted in red, their waists belted with girdles, with tasseled turbans on their heads, all of them gentlemen to look at, the lads of Babel, Kasdim by their native land, and she doted on them at the sight of her eyes, and sent messengers to them to the Kasdim. So the lads of Babel came to her bed of love, and corrupted her by their whoredoms, and when she was defiled by them, her desire revolted from them. Then she confessed her prostitutions, and disclosed her shame. But my soul revolted from her, as my soul had revolted from her sister. She, however, increased her prostitutions, remembering the period of her youth when she whored in the land of the Mitzrayim, and doted on the Philistine, whose bodies are like the bodies of asses, and their lust like the lust of horses. Thus you revived the idea of your youth, to work your love amongst the Mitzrayim, as though your breasts were young. Therefore, Alibah, the mighty Lord says this: I will inflame the paramours from whom your lust is alienated against you, and bring them from around to assail you, the lads of Babel and all the Kasdim, to punish and curse and brand you with all the lads of Ashur, handsome young fellows, nobles and governors, all of them gentlemen with titles, riders of horses, who will come upon you with shield and chariot at a rush, and with a crowd of nations armed with weapon and shield and helmet, and set themselves around you, and fix their faces for vengeance, and punish you with their own punishments. For I will show my jealousy against you. So they shall deal with you in snorting fury, and cut off your nose, and after that fell you with the sword. They will seize your sons and daughters, and after that consume you in the fire. I will thus make your vices to cease, and your whoredom from the land of the Mitzrayim, and you will not lift up your eyes to them, nor remember the Mitzrayim again. For thus says the mighty Lord: I will give you to the power of those you hate, whom your lust revolts from, and they shall deal with you in their hate, and seize all your earnings, and abandon you stripped and naked, and expose the shame of your prostitution and vices and whoredoms. This shall be done to you because of your whoring with the heathen with whom you corrupted yourself for their idols. You went the way of your sister, so I will pass her cup to your hand. Thus says the mighty Lord: you shall drink out of your sister's cup. You shall be mocked and insulted, ridiculed and laughed at beyond endurance. You shall be filled with drunkenness and anguish from the cup of ruin and desolation, the cup of your sister Shomeron. Yes, you shall drink and suck it, and chew the dregs, and tear your breasts. For I have said so, the mighty Lord declares. Therefore, thus the mighty Lord declares, because you have forgotten me and flung me behind your back, you shall bear your vices and fornications.
Then the Lord asked me,
Son of Adam, will you judge Allah and Alibah, and remind them of their depravities? for adultery and murder are in their hands, and they have committed adultery to their idols, and their children which they bore to me, they have passed them round to be eaten. They have also done this to me. They have defiled my sanctuary at the same time, and profaned my Sabbaths, for they have murdered their children to the idols, and on the same day come to my sanctuary to defile it. Nay, they have even done it in my house. And in spite of all that, you have sent for men to come from a distance, to whom you have sent a messenger, and they came. Then you bathed, painted your eyes, and decked yourself with jewels for them, and sat on a splendid couch, with a table spread before it, and my oil and perfumes upon it. And the sound of luxury was with her, and with the mob of men from the east, drunkards from the desert, on whose hands she put jewels and beautiful turbans on their heads. Then I remarked, will they commit adultery with the old woman? Will they fornicate with a worn-out prostitute? And they went to her as they go to a woman who is a whore. That is how they went to Allah and Alibah, the profligate wives. Righteous men, however, will punish them with the punishments of adulteresses and with the punishments of murderesses, for adultery and murder are on their hands. For thus said the mighty Lord, I will bring upon them a crowd and deliver them to be hustled about and plundered. Then the mob will shower stones at them and cut up with their swords, kill their sons and daughters, and consume their houses with fire. I will thus expel their vices from the country and warn all women not to practice their sins. They will in this way lay your vices upon you, and you shall bear the sins of your idolatry and learn that I am the ever-living. Chapter 24.
The command of the ever-living again came to me in the 9th year, on the 10th of the 10th month, to say, Son of Adam, write the name of this day, for upon this day's date the king of Babel arrived at Jerusalem. So compose a parable to the rebellious family, and say to them, Thus says the mighty Lord, Set on the pot, set it on, and pour water into it. Cut up for it every good cut, the leg and the shoulder, fill it with the best bones. Take a fat sheep, and also pile the bones with it. Boil it well, and stew the bones in it. For thus says the mighty Lord, Woe to the murderer's city, whose scum is in her, and whose scum cannot get out from her. Bring it out bit by bit, let no lump fall into her. For her blood is in her, she poured it on the dry rock. She did not pour it on the earth to cover it with dust. She brought indignation upon her crime. I exposed her blood upon the dry rock without concealment. Therefore, thus the mighty Lord says, Woe to the city of murderers, for I will pile on the fire, heap on wood, make the fire flame, stew the flesh and season it. But let the bones be burnt, and let it stand empty on the hot coals, so that it may be hot and burn the brass, until the foul scum in it is completely destroyed. She has boiled her scum well, but it has not come out of her. Her scum increases, the fire increases it from your foul vices. Although I cleansed you, you would not be clean from your filth. You will never be clean until I have satiated my indignation upon you. What I, the ever-living, have threatened will come, and I will accomplish it. I shall neither shrink, spare, nor pity. I shall punish you according to your ways and conduct, says the mighty Lord. The command of the ever-living came again to me to say, Son of Adam, I intend to take the desire of your eyes from you suddenly, and you must neither grieve nor weep, nor allow your tears to flow. Groan in silence, make no moaning for the dead. Arrange your turban on you, and put your shoes on your feet, and cover not your lips, and eat no bread for your wife. So I conversed with people in the morning, and my wife died in the evening. But I did the next morning as the ever-living commanded me. Then the people asked me, Will you inform us what this that you are doing means for us? When I replied to them, The command of the ever-living came to me, saying, Proclaim to the house of Israel, thus says the mighty Lord, I will defile my sanctuary, the pride, strength, and desire of your eyes, and the darling of your life, and your sons and daughters left, so you will fall by the sword. But they will make you do as I have done. You will not be allowed to cover your lips, nor to eat the bread of men, but be forced to dress your heads and show your feet, nor may you mourn or weep, but waste away in your sufferings and moan each to his companion. And Ezekiel has become a sign to you that all he has done you will have to do. Then you will learn that I am the mighty Lord. So now, son of Adam, in the day I take from them their confidence, their joy, their delight, the desire of their eyes, and the object of their life, their sons and daughters, in that day will not the fugitives come to you to report it to your ears? At that time open your mouth to the refugees, for you can then speak to them and be no more dumb as while you are assigned to them, when they will learn that I am the ever-living.
The end of chapters 19 through 24. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 25 through 30 of the Book of Ezekiel, from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 25.
Again the command of the Lord came to me to say,
Son of Adam, set your face against the Beni Ammon and proclaim about them, and say to the Beni Ammon, Listen to the message of the mighty Lord. Thus says the mighty Lord, because you shouted hurrah against my sanctuary when it was violated, and against the soil of Israel when it was desolated, and against the house of Judah when it went to captivity, I will in consequence give you to the sons of the east for a possession, and they shall settle on your downs and encamp on them, and eat your fruits and drink your milk. I will also make Rabbah a fold for camels, and the Beni Ammon a couch for sheep, when you will learn that I am the ever-living. For thus the mighty Lord says, because you clapped your hands and jigged on your feet and rejoiced with all the spite of your soul against the soil of Israel, I have in consequence extended my hand against you and have given you to be plundered by the nations and cut off from the peoples and to perish from the countries. I will destroy you when you will learn that I am the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord, because Moab and Seir say, See, the house of Judah is like other nations. Be sure I will open the gates of Moab from the cities, from his frontier cities, the pride of the country, Beth Jeshimoth, Baal Peor, to Kiriathaim, to the sons of the east who assail the Beni Ammon, to whom I have given them as a possession, so that the Beni Ammon may not be remembered amongst the nations. And I will execute justice upon Moab, when they will learn that I am the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord, because Edom has been revengeful against the house of Judah, and ravaged, and was spiteful to them, therefore the mighty Lord says this, I have extended my hand against Edom, and will cut off from Edom men and cattle, and make it a heap of ashes from Teman to Dardan. They shall fall by the sword. I will also lay my punishment upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they shall execute my anger and indignation upon Edom, and they shall experience my punishments, says the mighty Lord. Thus says the mighty Lord, because the Philistine have been revengeful, and have revenged with a malicious spirit, and ravaged with perpetual spite. Therefore the mighty Lord says this, I will stretch out my hand against the Philistine, and cut off the swordsmen, and destroy the remnants on the shore of the sea, and inflict great punishments amongst them, when they will learn that I am the ever-living, who lay punishments upon them. Chapter 26.
It was in the 11th year, on the 1st of the month, that the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
son of Adam, because Tsur said to Jerusalem, Hurrah, the gate of the nations is broken, her ruin will turn wealth to me. Therefore the mighty Lord says thus, I am opposed to you, Tsur, and will bring many nations against you, like the rollers come up from the sea, and they will wreck the walls of Tsur, and raise her towers, and sweep the dust from her, and I will make her a dry rock. She shall become in the midst of the sea a place for spreading, a place for nets in the midst of the sea. For I have said it, the mighty Lord declared, and she shall become plunder for the nations, and her daughters who are in the country shall be murdered by the sword, when she will learn that I am the ever-living. The mighty Lord says this, I will bring Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, from the north against Tsur, the king of kings, with horse and chariot and cavalry, and the mass of a great force. Your daughters in the country will be slain by the sword, and he will make a rampart against you, and heap up an embankment, and raise approaches against you, and erect batteries against your towers, and overthrow your towers with his pickaxes. The dust from his troops of horses shall cover you. Your wall will shake with the roar from his horsemen and wagons and chariots when they enter your gates, as they enter the breach of a city. He will tramp with the hoofs of his horses in all your streets. He will slaughter your people with the sword, and fling your fortifications to the ground. And they will plunder your wealth and loot your treasures, overturn your walls and pull down your charming palaces, and fling your stones and timbers and dust into the deep sea. And I will stop the sound of your songs, and the music of your harps shall be no longer heard, for I will make you a waterless rock. You shall become a place to spread nets, nor be rebuilt forever. For the mighty Lord has spoken, the mighty Lord declared it. Thus says the mighty Lord to Tsur, will not the islands tremble at the sound of your fall, at the groans of the slaughtered in your streets? And all the princes of the sea descend from their thrones, and strip off their broidered robes, and clothe themselves with terror? Sit on the ground, and lie down in silence and astonishment at you? Then they will raise a lamentation over you, and say, has the mistress of all the seas perished, the glorious city made strong by the sea, who with her people terrified all who were in it? How the shores shake at the day of your fall, and the isles of the sea are dismayed at your fate. For thus says the mighty Lord, I will make your city a heap of ashes, like the cities that are uninhabitable, by bringing up the billows against you, and covering you with great seas, and will bring you down to the lowest depth, to the men of old, and you shall dwell beneath the earth with everlasting desolation in the deepest pit. For you shall never be inhabited, because I will not let you dwell or give you plunder in the land of the living. I will make you a terror when you cease to exist, and when sought you shall not be found forever and ever, the mighty Lord declares. Chapter 27.
The command of the ever-living came again to me to say,
you yourself also, son of Adam, raise a lament over Tsur, and say to Tsur, you who reside at the ports of the sea, who trade with the peoples of numerous isles, thus says the Almighty Jehovah to Tsur, you boast, I am perfect in beauty, your bounds are the heart of the ocean, your builders have finished your charms. They built you with cypress from Sinir. For your decks they used Lebanon cedar, and they took it to form your high masts. Bashan's oak trees supplied you with oars. Your benches were ivory and box from Kittim. Your gay flag was fine linen of Egypt. Your sails were rich purple from Elisha's isles. Your sailors were peoples from Zidon and Arvad. Your pilots were skillful. They came, Tsur, from you. The skill and the science of Gebel were yours, constructing and building your ships for the sea, and their sailors were with you to go on your voyage. Fars, Lud, and Phut were your troops, your soldiers with shield and with helm, which they hung in you to add to your pride. And as troops round your walls were the sons of Arvad, and brave fellows they were on your towers, who hung up your shields round your walls and perfected your charms. You traded with Tharshish for all kinds of wealth, for silver, for iron, for tin, and for lead. They purchased your mercantile wares. Javan, Tubal, and Meshech all traded with you, giving bodies of men and bronze goods for your stores. The house of Togramah with horses and chargers and mules have all purchased your goods. Sons of Dedan dealt with you, and many isles traded, handing ebony, ivory in change for your cash, and Aram bought much of your factory products, with emeralds, and purple, and muslin, and lace, and coral, and rubies they paid for your wares. Judah and Israel's land were your dealers, for fine wheat and balms, and for honey and oil, and marbles they purchased from you. Damascus purchased much that you made, with the rich wine of Helbon and whitest of wool. Dan and Javan bought cloth in your markets. They sold you wrought iron, and cassia, and spices. Dedan sold you rich saddles for riding. The Arabs and princes of Kedar dealt with you. Lambs, sheep, and fine goats were their goods. The merchants of Sheba and Ramah were traders, with the best of all spices, and all precious gems, and gold which they paid for your wares. Haran and Kana and Aden with all Sheba's merchants, and Ashur and Kilmad were trading. They bought of you fine purple fabrics, and laces and braids of mixed hues, and cables well twisted, and cedars they purchased. Ships of Tarshish transported your trade, and extended your power in the heart of the seas. But your sailors have brought you to breakers. The eastern wind wrecks in the midst of the sea. Your bullion, your cargoes, your merchants and seamen, and captains, constructors, shipbuilders, and brokers, with all the bold warriors about you, with all those collected within you, will fall in the depth of the sea on the day when you fall. At the sound of the shriek of your pilots, the breakers will tremble. All who handle the ropes will descend from their ships. The sea captains and sailors will stand on the land, and will send up their cries, and will bitterly shriek, cast dust on their heads, and will roll on the sandhills, and strip themselves for you, and clothe them in sacks, and weep with soul anguish, and bitterly grieve, and raising their wail, they will chant over you. Oh, who was like Zur in the midst of the waters? Many nations were fed by your trade on the seas. By your great wealth and traffic the kingdoms grew rich. Now the breakers have wrecked in the trough of the sea. Your cargo and crew sink with you to its bed. All dwelling in islands are stupefied at you, and their monarchs quivering have terrified looks. The mercantile nations scream at you in terror. You were, but you never shall rise up again.
Chapter 28. Again the message of the ever-living came to me to say, Son of Adam, proclaim to the prince of Zur, and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, because of the pride of your heart, and your saying, I am a god, I sit with the gods in the heart of the seas, yet you are a man and not a god, although you have set your heart in the circle of the gods. However, you are wiser than the judge of the gods. They cannot hide any secrets from you. You have made yourself powerful by your sciences and your knowledge, and enriched yourself in treasures of gold and silver. You have traded with your many sciences. You have increased your power, and your heart has risen with your power. Therefore, thus says the mighty Lord, because you have set your heart like the heart of God, I will bring cruel, tyrannical nations against you, who will draw their swords against your fine sciences and spoil your splendor, and you shall sink to death with a deadly wound in the heart of the sea. Will you assert before your murderers, I am a god? Yet you will be a man and not a god to the hand wounding you. You shall die in contempt. You shall die by the hand of a foreigner, for I, the ever-living, have decreed it. Then the command of the ever-living came to me to say, Son of Adam, raise a lament over the king of Zur, and say to him, Thus says the mighty Lord, You perfect seal, full of science and spotless in beauty,
You once were in Eden, the garden of God. Every stone that is precious was fastened upon you: ruby, topaz, and diamond, the beryl and onyx, sapphire, emerald, and opal. In chasings of gold they were made, and set on you the day you were born. And you were the cherub, the holy protector, and sat on the hill that was sacred to God. You walked in the midst of the bright flashing jewels. You were right in your path from the day of your birth, until in yourself the corruption was formed, till your trades filled your breast with extortion and wrong. So I flung you out from the mountain of godhood, and sent your guardian spirit from among the bright gems. From your beauty your heart rose, your science corrupted. Notwithstanding your splendor, I flung you to earth, and before kings I cast you to show what you are. Your great passion for trade deeply wounded your virtues, so I bring fire from you, consuming yourself, and on earth lay your ashes in sight of onlookers. All nations who knew you will shudder above you. You have been a terror, but shall be never more.
Then the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, set your face against Zidon, and proclaim to her, and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, Zidon, I am against you, and I will be honored amongst you. Then they will know that I am the ever-living, when I execute justice on her, and I shall be respected in her. For I will send a plague to her, and bloodshed in her streets, and the slain shall fall in her from the sword that assails her around. Then they will learn that I am the ever-living, and there shall not be again an irritation from them, or painful briar to the house of Israel from any around, but they will learn that I am the mighty Lord. The mighty Lord declares thus, When I collect the house of Israel from the peoples among whom I have scattered them, and have been reverenced by them in the sight of the heathen, and they are restored to the soil I gave to my servant Jacob, upon which they shall dwell in safety, and build houses and plant vineyards and rest secure, when I have executed justice on all around who despised them, they will acknowledge that I am their ever-living God. Chapter 29.
In the 10th year, on the 12th day of the 10th month, the command of the ever-living came to me to say, Set your face against Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, and proclaim to him and to all the Mitzrayim. Speak and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, I am opposed to you, Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, you great reptile of the land between the rivers, who says to me, It is my river, I made it for myself. I, however, will put hooks into your jaws, and make the fish of your rivers stick to your scales, and pull you up out of your rivers onto the face of the fields where you will fall, neither collected nor picked up, but I will give you as food to the beasts of the earth and the birds of the skies. Then all the population of the Mitzers will know that I am the ever-living, because they were a reed-like crutch to the house of Israel. When they leaned upon your handle, you split and gashed all their shoulder, and when they leaned upon you, you broke and shook all their waist. Therefore, thus the mighty Lord declares, I will bring a sword against you, and cut off from you men and cattle, and the land of the Mitzrayim shall become a desolation and ash heap, and they shall learn that I am the ever-living, because they said, The river is mine, and I made it. Therefore I oppose you and your river, and will make the land of the Mitzrayim a heap of ashes, a waste of ashes from the tower of Sunah to the borders of Cush. The foot of man shall not pass over it, nor shall it be inhabited for 40 years. For I will make the land of the Mitzrayim a waste in the midst of desolate countries, and her cities in the midst of cities of ashes. They shall be deserted for 40 years, and I will scatter the Mitzrayim among the nations, and sow them among the countries. But, the mighty Lord declares, at the end of 40 years, I will collect the Mitzrayim from the peoples where I have driven them, and restore the captive Mitzrites, and return them to the district of Pathros, to the land of their birth, and it shall become a low kingdom.
It shall be lower than any kingdom, and never again raise itself above the nations, for I will prevent it from trading in nations, and it shall no more be trusted by the house of Israel, a reminder of former sufferings to their face. Then they will learn that I am the ever-living.
It happened again in the 27th year, on the 1st of the 1st month. The command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, has done a big work with his army at Sur. Every head has been made bare, and every shoulder chafed. But neither he nor his army have had any pay from Sur for the work they have done against her. Therefore, thus says the mighty Lord, I will give the land of the Mitzrayim to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, and he shall carry off her wealth, plunder her plunder, and loot her loot, and it shall be the pay of his army. For the work he has done at her, I give to him the land of the Mitzrayim, for what he did for me, said the mighty Lord. At the same time I will produce a shoot from the house of Israel, and give you an open mouth amongst them, when they will learn that I am the ever-living. Chapter 30.
The command of the ever-living came again to me to say,
Son of Adam, proclaim and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, Howl, alas for the day comes, the day of the ever-living comes, a gloomy day, the day of the nations comes, and a sword has gone to Mitzer, and anguish has gone to Cush at the fall of the wounded of Mitzer, for her wealth is seized, and her foundations are upturned. Cush and Phut and Lud and all the Arab and Kub, and the men of the countries allied with them shall fall by the sword. Thus, said the Lord, they shall fall heavily with Mitzer, and her proud strength shall rush down. They shall fall with her by the sword from Migdol to Suneh, said the ever-living, and be desolate amongst the desolate countries, and their cities amongst the cities shall become heaps of ashes, when they will learn that I, the ever-living, have put a fever in Mitzer, which will shatter all her strength. Then messengers shall proceed from my presence to the deserts to cause terror to easy Cush, and anguish will reach them like that of Mitzer, for look, it has arrived. The mighty Lord continued thus, I will take away the wealth of Mitzer by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel. He and his people with him, the terror of nations, advance to destroy the country, and draw their swords against Mitzer, and fill the land with slain. I also will make their rivers ash heaps, and sell the country to the hands of the cruel, and desolate the land and its industry by the hand of foreigners. I, the ever-living, have said it. Thus says the mighty Lord, I will make the idols waste away, and destroy the delusions from Noph, and a prince shall never again come from the land of the Mitzrayim, but I will put fear in the country of Mitzer. I will desolate the delta, and set fire to Zayon, and execute justice on Noah, and pour my indignation on Sin, the fortress of Mitzer, and cut off the wealth of Noah. When I set fire to the Mitzrayim, Sin will be in torment, and Noph in daily misery. The warriors of Aven and Pi Beseth will fall by the sword, and they shall go to captivity. What a dark day for Taphanes, when I break the supports of the Mitzrayim, and destroy the pride of her power. Gloom will cover her, when her daughters go into slavery, and I execute justice on the Mitzrayim. Then they will learn that I am the ever-living.
It was in the 11th year, on the 1st of the 7th month, the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, I have shattered the arm of Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, and it has not been bound with remedial appliances or wrapped in bandages to fix and strengthen it to grasp the sword. For, thus said the mighty Lord, I am opposed to Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, and have broken the arms of his power. They are broken, and have caused the sword to fall from his hand. And I will scatter the Mitzrayim amongst the nations, and sow them in the countries, but will strengthen the arms of the king of Babel, and put my sword into his hand, but break the arms of Pharaoh, who will groan the groans of the wounded before him. For I have strengthened the arms of the king of Babel, and enfeebled the arms of Pharaoh, and they shall learn that it is I, the ever-living, who put the sword into the hand of the king of Babel, and extend it against the Mitzrayim, and who scatter the Mitzrites amongst the nations, and sow them amongst the countries, where they will learn that I am the ever-living. The end of chapters 25 through 30. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 31 through 36 of the Book of Ezekiel, from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 31.
It was in the 11th year, on the 3rd of the 1st month, that the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, ask Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, and all his crowd, who are you like in your grandeur? You saw Ashur was a cedar in Lebanon, with beautiful branches and silent shade and lofty heights, with his foliage like dark clouds. He grew by the brooks, the deep rose for him, her streams ran round his roots and sent their rills to all the trees of the field. So his stature was higher than all the trees in the fields, and his branches increased, and his boughs multiplied from the plentiful water sent to him. All the birds of the skies nestled in his branches, and all the beasts of the field bred under his boughs, and many nations rested under his shade. And he was beautiful in his grandeur and wide-stretching leafage, for his roots were in plenty of water. The cedars in the garden of God could not hide him. The pines were not equal to his boughs, nor were the planes to his branches. All the trees in the garden of God were not equal to him in his beauty. I made him beautiful with his many branches, and all the trees in the garden of God envied him. However, the mighty Lord says this, because of excessive height, and placing his foliage in the clouds, and lifting his heart in pride, I have given him to the prince of nations. He will deal with him. I have driven him off in his crime, and foreign cruel nations shall cut him down, and abandon him on the hills, when all his glorious boughs will wither, and his branches be broken by the strong of the earth. And all the peoples of the earth have fled from his shade and left him. Upon his wreck all the birds of the skies will settle, and all the beasts of the field come to his boughs. So let none of all the trees by the brooks exalt themselves on high, nor place their foliage in the clouds, nor station themselves above all the drinkers of water. For all will be given to death, to the earth beneath, amongst the sons of Adam who go down to the pit. On the day he went to the grave, said the mighty Lord, I mourned, I covered the deep for him, I stopped the rivers, I shut up many waters. I darkened Lebanon for him, and all the trees of the field fainted for him. At the sound of his fall the nations shook. At his descent to the grave, at his descent to the pit, the depths of the earth sighed. All the trees of Eden, the best and fairest of Lebanon, all that drink waters, they went down with him to the grave, to the slain by the sword, who lay scattered beside him among the nations. Are you like him in glory and grandeur among the trees of Eden? You will still be brought down with the trees of Eden to the lower earth among the defiled, lying with those killed by the sword, you Pharaoh and all your companions, says the mighty Lord. Chapter 32.
It was in the 12th year, on the 12th month, on the 1st of the month, the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of man, take up a lament for Pharaoh, king of the Mitzrayim, and say about him, You were like a young lion to nations, and you were like to a reptile in seas, and you paddled your feet in the rivers, and muddled about in your streams. But thus says the mighty Jehovah, Over you I will fling out my net, and my toils with a great crowd of men. Leave on land on the face of the field, and the birds of the skies light on you, and the beasts of the earth on you gorge. On the hills I will fling out your flesh, and the vales shall be full of your worms. Flood the land where you swam with your blood, and fill the dales up to the hills. When I quench you, I'll darken the stars, and cover the sun in a cloud, and the moon shall not give out her light. For you darken the lamps of the skies, and spread darkness over your land. Thus the Almighty Lord has declared. Many nations will grieve at the heart when I wreck you along with the tribes, in lands that you never had known, and waste many peoples with you, and kings lie in trouble for you when I brandish my sword in their face, and shrink back in terror each one for his life in the day of your fall. For thus says the mighty Lord, the sword of the king of Babel shall come to you. I will fell you by the swords of his generals, the most cruel of the nations, and they will plunder the pride of Mizar and destroy her wealth. And I will deprive her of all the cattle beside her many streams, nor shall the foot of man muddle them again, nor the hoof of cattle muddle them, when I cause your brooks to shrink and your rivers to run like oil, says the mighty Lord. When I make the land of the Mitzrayim desolate and deprive the country of its industry, when I strike its inhabitants, they will acknowledge that I am the ever-living. This is the lamentation with which the daughter of the nations will lament her. They will lament over Mizar and all her wealth. They will lament her, says the mighty Lord.
It was in the 12th year, on the 15th of the month, that the command of the ever-living came to me to say,
Son of Adam, wail over the population of Egypt, and the daughters of the noble nations gone down beneath the earth, descended to the pit. You, beauty, descend and lie down with the vile. In the home of the slaughtered who fall by the sword, they give her a bed with her crowds. From the midst of the grave, heroes call out to her, where the mighty departed lie slain by the sword. There is Ashur and all his assembly with him. They are buried, all slain as they fell by the sword. Each is placed in his tomb at the sides of the pit, and his troops still about him surrounding his grave. They are all of them slain and flung down by the sword, who made themselves terrors when living on earth. Ilam is there with her friends, all surrounding her tomb, who were all of them slaughtered and felled by the sword, who departed, defiled to the earth underneath, who made themselves terrors when living on earth, but were loaded with shame when they went to the pit. In the midst of the slain they have made her a bed, and with all her companions around her entombed. They were slain by the sword, and the whole were disgraced, though in life they had made themselves terrors to earth, and they bear their disgrace with those gone to the pit. She is laid in the midst of her slain. There is Meshech and Tubal with great hosts around, all entombed in disgrace with the slain by the sword, though in life they had made themselves terrors on earth. Lie they not with the heroes who fell in defeat, who went down to the grave with their weapons of war? 'Neath their heads are their swords, and their rags on their bones, though in life they had made themselves terrors on earth. And yourself shall be broke in the midst of the vile. You shall lie down with those who are slain by the sword. There is Edom, her king, and her princes are there, who are laid with their brave, but all slain by the sword. They sleep there with the vile, and are gone to the pit. All the league of the north and all Zidon are there, who fell slain with their terrible heroes ashamed, and lie vilely disgraced with the slain by the sword, and bear their reproach with those gone to the pit. Pharaoh sees them, feels comfort for all his slain host. Pharaoh, slain by the sword with his powerful troops, yes, Pharaoh's whole host, says my God ever-living. Though his terrors he placed on the living on earth, I cause him to sleep in disgrace with those slain by the sword. Yes, Pharaoh and all his great host, said Jehovah my God. Chapter 33.
The command of the ever-living came again to me to say,
Son of Adam, speak to the children of your people and say to them, when I bring a sword against a country, and take a man of that country to its borders, and appoint him as a watchman for them, and he sees the sword coming to the country, and he blows his trumpet and arouses the people, whoever hears the sound of the trumpet and does not take warning, but the sword approaches and seizes him, his blood will be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet and did not take warning. His blood will be on himself, since he had been warned to protect his life. But if when the watchman saw the sword advancing, he did not sound the trumpet, nor warn the people, and the sword came and took a person from them, he will have been taken by his fault, and I will require his blood at the hand of the watchman. And you, son of Adam, I have appointed you as a watchman for the house of Israel. Therefore listen to the command from my mouth, and warn them by it. If I say to the wicked that he shall die for his wickedness, and you do not speak to warn the sinner from his wicked way, he will die by his sin, but I will seek his blood on your hand. But when you warn the wicked to turn from his way, and he does not turn from his course, he will die for his sin, but you will have delivered your soul. So now, son of Adam, speak to the house of Israel, address them who say, because our sins and offenses are upon us, we waste away by them, and there is no revival. Say to them, by my life, says the mighty Lord, I do not delight in the death of the wicked, but wish the wicked to turn from his course and be revived. Turn from your bad course. Why will you kill yourselves, house of Israel? Therefore you, son of Adam, tell the children of your people, the righteousness of the good will not rescue him at the time when he sins, and the wickedness of the wicked will not weigh against him when he turns from his wickedness, nor the righteous be able to live by it when he sins. When I tell the righteous that he shall live, and he relies in that righteousness and does wrong, all his righteousness will not be remembered, but for the wrong he has done he will die by it. But when I tell the wicked he shall die, and he abandons his offenses and practices justice and right, if the wicked restores the pledge, returns the theft, follows the rules of life, ceases to do wrong, then he shall live, he shall not die. All the offenses by which he had offended will not be remembered against him. He practices justice and right, he will live. But the children of your people say, the path of the Almighty is not straight. Your path, however, is not straight. By the righteous turning from his righteousness and practicing evil, he then dies by it, and by the wicked turning from his wickedness and practicing justice and righteousness, he is revived by them. Yet you say, the path of the Almighty is not straight. House of Israel, I will sentence every one of you by his own courses.
It was in the 12th year, on the 10th of the 5th month of our transportation, a refugee from Jerusalem came to me to say, the city has been assaulted. But the hand of the Lord had been upon me in the evening before the refugee came, and he had opened my mouth when he came to me in the morning, and I could speak, being no longer dumb. So the command of the ever-living came to me to say, Son of Adam, the inhabitants of the ash heaps in the land of Israel exclaim and say, Abraham was an individual, yet possessed the country, and we are many. Give us the possession of the country. Therefore tell them, Thus says the mighty Lord, because of the blood you eat and the raising of your eyes to idols and the blood you have shed, ought you to possess the country? You stand on your ruins practicing depravities, and each corrupts the wife of his neighbor, yet you would possess the country? Tell them this, Thus says the mighty Lord, By my life, those in the ruins shall fall by the sword, and those in the open field I will give to the beasts for food, and those in forts and caves shall die of disease. I will also make the country desolate and waste, and her proud power shall fail, and the hills of Israel be a desert without a passenger.
Then they will learn that I am the ever-living when I make the country desolate and waste because of all the depravities they practice. And you, son of Adam, the children of your people make a talk about you in the shadow of the walls and at the doors of their houses, and they say one to another, each to his friend, "Let us go now and listen what message has come from the ever-living." But they only come to you as a gathering crowd, and sit before you as a mob, and listen to your speech, but they do not practice it, for they flatter with their mouth, but their hearts follow villainy. And you are like a love song to them, beautiful in sound and cheering in tone, so they listen to your words, but they do not practice them. But when that comes which will come, they will acknowledge that a prophet has come amongst them.
Chapter 34. The command of the ever-living came again to me to say,
"Son of Adam, preach against the shepherds of Israel, and tell those shepherds, Thus says the mighty Lord, Woe to the shepherds who shepherd themselves! Should not shepherds shepherd their flock? Who consume the milk and wear the wool and kill the fattened, but shepherd not the flock? You have not strengthened the feeble, and have not cured the wounded, and have not bandaged the broken, nor turned back the straying, nor sought the lost, but brutally kicked and driven them off. So they were scattered without a shepherd, and devoured by all the wild beasts of the field, and chased. My sheep wandered on all the hills, and on all the high mountains, and over all the surface of the country the flock was scattered, and you never inquired or sought for them. Therefore, shepherds, listen to the message from the ever-living. By my life, says the mighty Lord, it is because you let my flock be devoured by all the wild beasts of the field without a shepherd. And the shepherds never care about my flock, but the shepherds mind themselves and do not mind the sheep. Therefore, shepherds, listen to the message from the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord, I am against you, shepherds, and will demand my sheep from your hands, and will dismiss you from your shepherdship of the flock. And you, shepherds, shall shepherd yourselves no more, but I will rescue my sheep from you, and you shall not devour them. For thus says the mighty Lord, I will attend my sheep and look after them, as a shepherd looks after his flock during the time he is amongst the scattering sheep. So I will look after my sheep and rescue them from all the hollows where they have been scattered in the day of clouds and darkness, and will bring them out from the peoples, and collect them from the countries, and bring them to their own ground, and shepherd them on the hills of Israel, by the brooks, and near the inhabited country. I will shepherd them with good shepherding, and their folds shall be on the high hills of Israel, where they shall lie down in good pasture, and feed fat on the provender of the hills of Israel. I will shepherd my flock, and I will comfort them, says the mighty Lord. I shall seek for the lost, and will turn back to straying, and bandage the broken, and strengthen the feeble, but kill the fat and strong. I will shepherd properly. I will also give my flock, the mighty Lord says this, myself justice between sheep, and rams and he-goats. Does it seem nothing to you to have fed on good pasture and neglected your shepherding, that you must trample it with your feet? And having been quenched with clear water, but you must muddle the rest with your feet, so that my sheep must eat what your feet crushed, and drink what your feet had befouled? Consequently, the mighty Lord says this, I myself will decide between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you have pushed with side and shoulder and struck with your horns all the weak until you have expelled them to the outside. I will protect my sheep, and they shall not again become a prey, for I will decide between sheep, and will appoint a perfect shepherd who will shepherd them, my servant David, who shall pasture them and be their shepherd. I, the ever-living, will also be their God, and my servant David a prince to them. I, the ever-living, have said it. Then I will make a treaty of peace with them, and expel cruel beasts from the country, so that they may reside in the open plains in security, and sleep in the woods. I will also endow those who surround my hills with a blessing, and rain shall pour down in its season, and there shall be blessed showers. Then the tree of the field shall bear its fruit, and the earth give out its produce, and they shall be secure on their grounds. Then they will know that I am the ever-living, when I have broken yokes off them, and delivered them from power of those who enslaved them. For they shall never again be a prey for the heathen, nor shall the wild beasts of the earth devour them, but they shall rest in safety and without fear. And I will raise for them a wonderful plant, and they shall be no more destroyed by famine in the country, and no more bear the insults of the heathen, but acknowledge that I am their ever-living God, and the house of Israel are my people, said the mighty Lord. You, however, my sheep, the sheep of my pastures, are men. I am your God, says the mighty Lord. Chapter 35.
The command of the ever-living came again to me to say,
Son of Adam, turn towards Mount Seir, and proclaim against it, and say to it, Thus says the mighty Lord, I am opposed to you, Mount Seir, and will extend my hand against you, and make you desolate and waste. I will lay your towns in ashes, and you shall become desolate, and learn that I am the ever-living. Because you had a perpetual hatred, and poured out the children of Israel to the hand of the sword, at the time of Edom, at the time of his passionate slaughter. Therefore by my life, says the mighty Lord, I will prepare blood for you, and blood shall pursue you, since you did not hate blood, therefore blood shall pursue you. So I will make Mount Seir desolate and waste, and will cut off from it travelers and resident. I will also cover his hills with his slain, and on your highlands and vales and plains those slain by the sword shall fall. I will make you an everlasting desolation. Your towns shall not be rebuilt. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living, because you said, Both those nations and those two countries will be mine, and I shall possess them. But the ever-living was there. Therefore by my life, says the mighty Lord, I will act like the rage and envy that you displayed against them, and display myself as amongst them when I punish you. You also will learn that I am the ever-living, and have heard all the insults you uttered against the mountains of Israel. They are desolated for us, they are given us to be devoured, and you inflated yourself against me by your mouth, and boasted against me by your words. I heard. Thus says the mighty Lord, when all this country is glad, I will make you desolate. You rejoiced over the injuries to the house of Israel when desolate, therefore I will do this to you. All Mount Seir and all Edom shall become desolate, and learn that I am the ever-living. Chapter 36. But now, son of Adam, preach to the mountains of Israel, and say, Mountains of Israel, listen to a message from the ever-living. Thus says the mighty Lord, because your enemies say, Ah, ah, at you. The everlasting hills will be our possessions. Therefore proclaim and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, although they have ravaged and worried you all round, to make you a province of broken nations, and to bring you on to the end of the tongue as a contemptible people. Therefore, mountains of Israel, listen to the message of the mighty Lord. The mighty Lord says to the mountains, and to the hills, and to the valleys and dales, and to the waste heaps of ashes, and to the deserted cities that were plundered and laughed at by the broken nations around you, Thus says the mighty Lord, I will promise in the fire of my indignation against the broken nations and against Edom. All of them who assigned my land to themselves as a possession, with a delighted heart and a malignant mind, that they should be a subject of plunder. Therefore proclaim to the soil of Israel, and tell the mountains and hills and valleys and dales, Thus says the mighty Lord, I promise you in my indignation and anger, because you have borne the insults of the heathen. Therefore, Thus says the mighty Lord, I have raised my hand, that the heathen around you shall bear their own disgrace. But you, mountains of Israel, shall grow trees and bear fruit for my people Israel when they are ready to come. For I am with you, and will turn towards you, and you will be cultivated and sown, and I will increase a population from all of the house of Israel, who will return to the burnt-up cities and rebuild them. For I will increase men and cattle upon you, and you will increase and breed to your ancient population, and I will benefit you more than formerly. Then you will learn that I am the ever-living, when I bring the men of my people Israel to you, who will possess you, and you shall be their estates, and you shall never again be bereaved. Thus says the mighty Lord, because they say to you, you devour men and have been a destroyer of your population. Therefore you shall not again devour your population, nor again be bereaved of your population, says the mighty Lord. And I will no more startle you by the insult of the heathen, and you shall no more bear the reproach of the peoples, for you shall not be bereft of your population again, the mighty Lord declares.
The message of the ever-living came again to me to say,
Son of Adam, when the house of Israel resided in their own country, they defiled it by their conduct and idols. Their conduct before me was like that of a depraved, loose woman. So I poured my indignation upon them because of the blood they shed upon the earth and its defilement by idols. I also scattered them amongst the heathen and littered them in the countries. I punished them for their ways and practices. But upon arriving amongst the heathen where they were sent, they degraded my holy name by saying to them, These are the people of the ever-living, but they have been put out from his country. I, however, have regard to my holy name, which the house of Israel have degraded amongst the heathen where they wander. Therefore tell the house of Israel, Thus says the mighty Lord, I will not effect this for your sakes, house of Israel, but for my holy name, which you have degraded amongst the heathen to whom you have come. I intend to sanctify my greatly degraded name amongst the heathen, which you degraded amongst them, so that the heathen may learn that I am the ever-living, the mighty Lord declares, by my making myself sacred in their eyes through you. Then I will bring you from the heathen and collect you from all the countries, and bring you to your own soil and wash you with pure water, and purify you from all your corruptions, and cleanse you from your idolatries, and give you a new heart, and put a new spirit in your breast, and remove the heart of stone from your body, and place in you a heart of flesh, and put my spirit into your breast, and cause you to walk according to my institutions, and regard and practice my decrees. Then I will restore you to the country I gave to your ancestors, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God, and rescue you from all your corruptions, and call to the corn and increase it, and not lay famine upon you. I will also increase the fruit of the trees and the products of the fields, so that the reproach of famine will no more be brought against you by the heathen. Then you will reflect on your wicked ways and bad conduct, and be despicable in your own sight because of your sins and depravities. I shall not do this for your sakes, the mighty Lord declares. Let yourselves know that, and be ashamed and feel the disgrace of your conduct, house of Israel. The mighty Lord says thus, In the time when I cleanse you from all your passions and restore you to your cities, and you rebuild the burnt ruins, and the desolate land that was a waste to the eyes of all who passed through it is again cultivated, they will ask, How has this country that was a desert become like the Garden of Eden, and its burnt and desolate and broken down cities inhabited fortresses? Then the fragments of the heathen around will recognize that I, the ever-living, have rebuilt the ruins and planted the waste. I, the ever-living, have promised and will perform it. Thus says the mighty Lord, Yet I must be requested by the house of Israel to do this. Then I will increase population for them like sheep. Like blessed sheep they shall be, like sheep in Jerusalem at her fairs. The burnt cities shall be full of men like flocks, and they shall learn that I am the ever-living. The end of chapters 31 through 36. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 37 through 42 of the Book of Ezekiel from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 37.
The hand of the ever-living came upon me, and carried me out by the whirlwind of the Lord, and let me down on the plain, and it was full of bones. Then it whirled me over them round and round, and I saw very many on the surface of the plain, and I perceived they were very dry. Then he asked me, Son of Adam, can these bones be revived? And I replied, You know, mighty Lord. When he answered, Preach to these bones, and say to them, Dry bones, listen to the message of the living life. The mighty Lord proclaims, I will bring a wind to you, and you shall revive. I will also put sinews on you, and cause flesh to cover you, and cover you with skin, and put breath into you, when you will revive, and learn that I am the life. I consequently preached as he ordered me, and as I preached a sound came, and I perceived an earthquake, and the bone approached to bone. Then I watched, and saw muscles come over them, and flesh rise, and skin cover them over all, but breath was not in them. He then said to me, Proclaim to the wind, proclaim, Son of Adam, and say to the wind, Thus says the mighty Lord, Wind, come from the four winds, and blow into the throats of these, and let them revive. So I proclaimed as he ordered me, and the wind came to them, and they revived, and stood on their feet, a very, very great army. Then he said to me, Son of Adam, these bones are all the house of Israel. You know they say, Our bones are dry, and our hope has faded. We are exterminated. Therefore proclaim and tell them, Thus says the mighty Lord, Be certain that I will open your graves and bring you from your tombs, my people, and lead you to the soil of Israel. Then you will learn that I am the life when I open your graves and bring you, my people, from your tombs. And I will put my breath into you and revive you. I, the life, have promised, and I will perform it, said the ever-living. The message of the ever-living came again to me to say,
Now you, son of Adam, select a stick for yourself, and write upon it, For Judah. And for the sons of Israel his companions, take another stick, and write on it, For Joseph. A stick for Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel their companions. Then join them for yourself one to another as one stick, and make them one for your hand. And when the children of your people ask you and say, Will you inform us why you do this? Say to them, Thus says the mighty Lord, Look, I shall take the stick of Joseph which is next to Ephraim, and the staves of Israel his companions, and join them to the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall become one for my hand. Then hold the sticks you have written upon in your hand in their sight, and say to them, Thus says the mighty Lord, Look, I will take the children of Israel from the hand of the heathen where they have gone, and collect them from around, and lead them to their own land, where I will make them one nation in the country on the mountains of Israel, and they shall have a single king to govern them, and shall never more be two nations, nor be again divided into two kingdoms. They will not defile themselves again with idols and pollutions, nor any of their rebellions, for I will rescue them from all their faults in which they sinned, and purify them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. Then my servant David shall reign over them, and be their single shepherd to them all, and they will conduct themselves by my decrees, and regard my institutions, and practice them, and rest in the country that I gave to my servant Jacob, where your fathers dwelt. You shall reside in it, and your sons and grandsons forever, and my servant David shall be your prince forever. I will then make a treaty of peace. It shall be an everlasting treaty that I will make with them, and I will increase them, and fix my sanctuary amongst them forever, and reside with them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Then the heathen will learn that I, the ever-living, sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary is amongst them forever. Chapter 28.
The message of the ever-living came again to me to say,
Son of Adam, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and proclaim to him and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, I am opposed to you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, but I shall control you by putting my bit into your jaws and bringing you and all your army, horsemen and cavalry, all of them fully armed, a numerous host with shields and bucklers and trained to the use of swords, and Pars, Cush, and Phut, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his hordes, the house of Thorgarma from the far north and the whole of his hordes, many peoples with you, drilled and disciplined by yourself, you and all your host, and their hosts with you, and you yourself shall be their commander, prepared by yourself for a long time, shall come at the end of the years to the country restored from its ruins, with your recruits from many peoples, against the mountains of Israel that were a continuous waste, but who have been brought out of the nations, and all of them dwelling in security, until you ascend like a storm, coming on like a cloud to cover the land, you and all your hordes, and many peoples with you. Then, thus says the mighty Lord, at that time thoughts will come into your mind, and you will conceive a vile idea, and will say, I will attack a country of unwalled villages. I will advance to a quiet, secure population, all of them without walls or bars and having no gates, to plunder and loot, to turn your hand against the re-inhabited ruins, and against a people collected from the heathen, practicing commerce and trade, and residing on the top of the earth. Sheba and Dedan, and all merchants of Tharshish, and all her young lions will ask you, Have you come to plunder and rob? Have you collected your host to carry off silver and gold, to seize commerce and trade, and to plunder a great plunder? Therefore proclaim, son of Adam, and tell Gog, Thus says the mighty Lord, at the time when my people Israel rest secure, will you not know it, and come from your home in the far north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great horde and a numerous army? And you will come against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the country. It shall be in future times that I shall bring you to my country, so that the nations may recognize me when I have distinguished myself upon you, Gog, in their sight. Thus says the mighty Lord, you are the one of whom I spoke in former times by means of my servants the prophets of Israel, who proclaimed in the period of their life that I would bring you upon them. But at that time, at the period when Gog arrives at the soil of Israel, the mighty Lord declares it, my indignation will be raised in my face, and in my anger and fiery wrath I promise that at that time there shall be a great trembling in the soil of Israel, when the fish of the sea, and the birds of the skies, and the beasts of the field, and all the things that creep on the face of the earth, shall tremble before me, and the hills shall be overthrown, and the steeps shall fall, and every wall in the country shall fall. I will then proclaim against him a sword on all my hills, and the sword of each will assail his companion, says the mighty Lord. And I will execute justice upon him by disease and slaughter, and pouring rain, and hail of fire, and rain brimstone upon him, and upon his hordes, and upon the many nations who are with him. For I intend to magnify and distinguish and manifest myself to the eyes of many nations, that they may learn that I am the ever-living. Chapter 39. So now, son of Adam, proclaim against Gog, and say, Thus says the mighty Lord, I am opposed to you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Therefore I will incite you, and induce you, and bring you up from the far north, and lead you to the hills of Israel, where I will strike your bow out of your left hand, and your arrows shall drop from your right upon the hills of Israel. You shall fall, and I will give you and all your hordes as food for the ravenous birds of all kinds, and beasts of the field. You shall fall on the face of the fields, for I have decreed it, says the mighty Lord. I will also send fire upon Magog and the population of the secure coasts, and they shall learn that I am the ever-living. Then my holy name will never die, when the heathen learn that I, the ever-living, am beneficent to Israel. Be sure it will come, and be in existence, says the mighty Lord, that day of which I speak. Then the population of the cities of Israel shall come out and burn and fire the arms and bucklers and shields and bows and arrows and maces and spears, and burn them for 7 years as fuel. They will not need to carry timber from the fields, nor to cut it from the forests, for they will burn the equipments as fuel, and plunder their spoil and loot their loot, the mighty Lord declares. And on that day I will give Gog a place of burial in Israel, the vale of passage, alongside the sea. But it will make the travelers stop their noses, and they will bury Gog there with all his multitude, and call the spot Gog's defeat. It will take the people of Israel 7 months to bury them, so that they may purify the country. All the people of the country will be burying them, and it will be amongst them a day to celebrate my name, says the mighty Lord. They will also appoint men to regularly go over the country to bury those who have dropped in scatterings upon the face of the earth, to cleanse it. They will be burying for a period of 7 months. When the searchers who examine the country perceive a human bone, they will erect a beacon beside it, until the buriers bury it in the vale of Gog's host, and the city also will be named Hamonah. Thus the country will be cleansed. But now, son of Adam, the mighty Lord commands thus: Call to every kind of bird and to every beast of the field, collect yourselves and come and gather around to the sacrifice that I will sacrifice for you, the great sacrifice upon the hills of Israel, and I will feed you with flesh and quench you with blood. You shall eat the flesh of heroes and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, rams, lambs, and magnificent bulls, all of them fat-fleshed. I will feed you to gorging with fat and make you drunk with blood at the sacrifice I shall sacrifice for you, and will satiate you at my table with horse and mounted hero and common soldier, says the mighty Lord, when I display my majesty to the nations, and all nations see the decision that I execute and the power with which I control them. Then the house of Israel will acknowledge that I am their ever-living God from that day forward. And the heathen will also learn that for their faults the house of Israel were transported. Consequently, when they deserted from me, I turned my face from them and delivered them to the power of oppressors, and they all fell before the sword on account of the corruption and the sin they practiced. Therefore I hid my face from them. Consequently, thus the mighty Lord declares, I will restore the captivity of Jacob and have pity upon all the house of Israel, and be in earnest for my holy name, and remove their degradation and all the perversity with which they abandoned me when they dwelt in their own country in safety and without fear, when I bring them back from the peoples and collect them from the countries of their enemies and distinguish myself in the sight of many nations. Then they will learn that I am their ever-living God, who transported them to the heathen, but who also will collect them into their own land, and never abandon them there again, nor will I again hide my face from them, when I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, says the mighty Lord.
Chapter 40. In the 15th year of our transportation, on the 10th of the first month of the year, in the 14th year after the city was captured, on that very day, the hand of the ever-living came upon me and brought me there. I was brought in the divine visions to the land of Israel, and was stationed on a very high hill, and opposite it, towards the south, was a city as if being built. When he brought me there, I saw a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a flaxen cord and a measuring rod in his hand, who stood at its gate. This man said to me, Son of Adam, look with your eyes, and listen with your ears, and fix in your mind all that I show you, because you have been brought for the purpose of having them shown. Therefore inform the house of Israel of all that I show you. I observed there was a wall around outside the temple, but the man had a measuring rod of 6 cubits and of a cubit and a hand's breadth in his hand. That was its length. And he measured the entrance to the temple, 1 rod, and its height 1. Then he went to the gate which faced towards the east, and ascended the stairs, and measured the threshold of the gate, 1 rod wide. That is, each threshold was 1 rod wide, with a lodge 1 rod long, and 1 rod broad, and the elevation of the lodges was 5 cubits. And the platform of the gate at the side porch of the gate opposite the temple was 1 rod. Next he measured the porch of the gate 8 cubits, with its panels of 2 cubits. This was the porch of the gate opposite the temple. And the lodges at the east gate were 3 on this side, and 3 on that side. The 3 of equal measure, and each of the porches the same size on each side. Then he measured the broad way of the gate, 10 cubits wide, with an incline of 13 cubits up to the gate, with a seat of 1 cubit on each side before the lodges, and a seat of 1 cubit at their sides. The lodges themselves were 6 cubits on this side, and 6 cubits on that side. He next measured the gate from roof to roof of the lodges, a distance of 25 cubits from door to door. Then he arranged a colonnade of 60 cubits, with a colonnade all round the court of the gate, and at the front of the entrance gate up to the front of the porch of the inner gate was 50 cubits. The lodges and porches had latticed windows with verandas around the gates, as well as verandas around the porches and windows, but there were palms over the porches. Then he brought me to the outer court. There I saw cloisters, and a worked tessellated pavement all over the court. There were 30 cloisters in the court, and there was a tessellation at the sides of the gates. The tessellation extended the whole breadth of the gates. Then he measured the breadth from before the tower gate at the front of the court, with a veranda outside for 100 cubits on the east and north. He also measured length and breadth of the gate that faces to the north of the outer gate, with its 3 lodges on each side, and its porches and cloisters were of the same size as at the first gate, 50 cubits long and 25 cubits broad, with the windows and porches and verandas like the form of the gate that faces towards the east, with 7 steps ascending to it, with a veranda over them. There was also a gate to the inner court on the south, a gate to the north and to the east, and he measured from gate to gate 100 cubits. Then he led me to the south, where I saw a gate towards the south, and he measured its porches and verandas the same measure of the others, with their windows surrounded by verandas, 50 cubits long and 25 cubits broad, with stairs of 7 steps, and verandas over them with a palm on each side of the porch. And there was a gate to the inner court towards the south, and he measured from gate to gate towards the south 100 cubits. Then he led me to the inner court by the south gate, and measured the south gate the same as the others, with its lodges and porches and verandas the same as them, and its windows with verandas round them, 50 cubits long and 25 cubits broad. The veranda also around was 25 cubits long and 5 cubits broad, with a veranda towards the outer court, and palms over the veranda, and 8 steps ascending to it. Next he brought me to the inner court towards the east, and measured the gate, the same size as the others, with its lodge, and porch, and veranda the same as them, and its windows with verandas around, 50 cubits long, and 25 cubits broad, with verandas towards the outer court, and palms over the verandas on each side, and 8 steps ascending to them. Then he led me to the north gate, and measured as he measured the others, its lodge and porch and veranda and its windows around, 50 cubits long and 25 cubits broad, with its porch towards the outer court on each side, and 8 steps going up to it. And near the porch of the gates there was a chamber fixed at the side of the stairs, and near the porch of the gate were 2 tables on one side, and 2 tables on the other side, upon which to slay the burnt offerings, and sin offerings, and trespass offerings. And on the outside of the stairs at the entry of the north gate were 2 tables. And on the other side, where the veranda of the gate is, were 2 tables. 4 tables here, and 4 tables there at the side of the gate, 8 tables to slay upon. There were also 4 tables of cut stone for the burnt offerings, of 1.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits broad, and their height 1 cubit, and the instruments with which they slaughtered the burnt offerings were laid upon them. And shelves were fixed around the house of a handbreadth, but the flesh of the gifts was on the tables. And outside the inner gate were the chambers of the singers. They were opposite the inner court on the north side of the gate, and faced towards the south. One was at the south of the east gate, facing towards the north.
And
he said to me,
this chamber that faces towards the south must be reserved for the priests of the temple. The chamber also which faces towards the north must be reserved for the sacrificing priests, who are of the descendants of Zadok, who approach to officiate to the ever-living from amongst the descendants of Levi.
Then he measured that court 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, a square, with the altar in front of the temple. Next he brought me to the porch of the temple, and measured each jamb of the porch, 5 cubits on this side, and 5 cubits on that, and the width of the gate was 3 cubits on this side, and 3 on that. The length of the colonnade was 20 cubits, and the breadth 11 cubits. And they ascended to its veranda by stairs, and pillars supported one side of veranda, and pillars the other.
Chapter 41.
Then he took me into the temple, and measured the veranda 6 cubits wide on one side, and 6 cubits wide on the other. The breadth of the tabernacle and the breadth of the entrance was 10 cubits, with shoulders to the entrance of 5 cubits on one side, and 5 on the other. The length he measured as 40 cubits, and width as 20 cubits. He then went inside and measured the 2 jambs, a cubit. But the approach was 6 cubits, and the breadth of the entrance 7 cubits. Next he measured the length of 20 cubits, and the breadth of 20 cubits, facing towards the temple, and said to me,
this is most sacred.
He afterwards measured the panellings of the temple of 6 cubits, with a breadth of wainscoting of 4 cubits all round the interior, and the wainscoting was panel above panel by 3s, and 3s repeated. But the panelling was laid close to the interior wall all round, so as to be supported by, but not to be fastened to the wall of the temple. So the panelling spread and encircled tier above tier, for they clothed the temple tier above tier all round the interior. Consequently they spread over the interior by tiers, and so from the lowest went up to the higher, and to the summit. And I observed that the interior was enclosed from the foundations with wainscoting, for a height of a full rod of 6 cubits at the side. The breadth of the wall that was wainscoted was 5 cubits, and there the house walls were completed. The remainder was for the tabernacle. There was also an interval of 20 cubits wide all round between the house and the sleeping rooms. And through the wainscoting to give access there was a gangway towards the north, and an entrance towards the south, and a broad way left from the gangway of 5 cubits all round it, with a wall that faced the side lobby towards the west, of extent of 70 cubits. And the pathway of this wall was 5 cubits wide, and the length of its circuit 90 cubits. Then he measured the temple as 100 cubits long, with a lobby, and its enclosures, and its wall as 100 cubits long, and the width of the front of the temple towards the east, and the lobby with its enclosures, was 100 cubits. Then he measured the length of the enclosure, facing the lobby that is at the back of it, with galleries on each side, as 100 cubits. And the inner temple, and the porches of the court, with the thresholds, and latticed windows, and the surrounding galleries in 3 tiers around, along with their platforms of smooth wood, and from the ground to the latticed windows. From the stairs at the entrance to the inner temple, he measured exactly both the roadway and all the surrounding walls, both of the inner and the outer, which were constructed of cherubim and palms, with a palm between cherub and cherub. And each cherub had 2 faces, that is, the face of a man towards the palm on one side, and the face of a lion towards the palm on the other side. They were fixed all round the temple. The cherubim and palms were stationed on the ground up to the stairs of the entrance, making an enclosure to the temple. There were 4 doors to the temple, and the front of the sanctuary shone like a mirror. There was an altar of wood, 3 cubits high, and its length 2 cubits. There were also cornices, shelves, and cupboards of wood.
"Here,"
he said to me,
"must be the table that is before the ever-living."
There were double doors between the temple and the sanctuary, with 2 swinging leaves to the 2 doors, 2 leaves to one door, and 2 leaves to the other door. And upon the doors of the temple were depicted cherubim and palms, the same as were formed on the walls, with a wooden awning in front of the porches on the outside, with latticed windows and palms on each side at the entrance of the porches. The temple was also wainscoted with wood.
Chapter 42.
Then he took me out to the outer court towards the north, and brought me to the sleeping rooms near the lobby, and near which is the northern wall. The length of its front was 100 cubits at the north side, and the width 70 cubits. Upon the face, the 20 that belonged to the inner court, and over the pavement of the outer court, were 3 repetitions of gallery above gallery. And in front of the sleeping rooms was a walk of 10 cubits wide for the gangways, a walk of 100 cubits, and their doors were northward. The upper sleeping rooms were narrower, for the galleries diminished them more than the lower and middle stories, for they were in 3 stories, and were not upon columns, like the columns of the courts. Consequently they were narrower than the middle, and lower ones on the ground. But there was another screen opposite the sleeping rooms, towards the outer court, in front of the dormitories, of 50 cubits long, for the length of the dormitories of the outer court was 50 cubits, and they were 100 cubits in front of the temple. And beneath these chambers was the passage from the east, as an entry to them from the outer court, in the extent of the enclosure of the court, towards the east, opposite the lobby, and opposite the building were the sleeping rooms. And the walk in front of them was similar to the chambers which are to the north. They were the same length and breadth, with all their passages and arrangements and entrances. And the entrances of the chambers that were towards the south opened at the top of the walk, opposite the fence along the gangway of the east walk. And he said to me, "The northern rooms and the southern rooms that face the lobby, they are the reserved dormitories where the priests who approach the ever-living shall eat the most sacred things. They shall store the most sacred things there, the food offerings and the sin and trespass offerings, for that part is sacred. When the priests arrive, they must not go to the outer court and place the robes in which they minister there, for they are sacred, but put on their other robes when they approach the people." Then when he had completed the measurements of the temple in the inner courts, he led me out by way of the gate that faces towards the east, and measured round it. He measured towards the east wind with his measuring rod, 500 rods, by measuring rod length. He measured towards the north wind 500 rods, by the measuring rod length. He measured towards the south wind 500 rods, by the measuring rod length. He measured to the west wind 500 rods, by the measuring rod. He measured to the 4 winds for a wall 500 long and 500 broad, to encircle the temple, to divide the holy from the defiled.
The end of chapters 37 through 42. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 43 through 48 of the Book of Ezekiel from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 43.
He then brought me to the gate facing towards the east, And I saw the glorious God of Israel come from the way of the east, with a sound like the sound of many waters. And the earth was enlightened by his splendor. And the appearance of the vision that I saw was like the appearance which I saw when I came to the destruction of the city, and visions like the appearance that I saw by the great river, and I fell on my face. But the glorious life came to the temple by way of the gate that faces towards the east, and the wind lifted me up and brought me to the inner court, and I saw the house full of the splendor of the life. Then I heard from the temple an address to myself, and a man came and stood beside me, and said to me,
Son of Adam, the place for my throne and the place for the soles of my feet, where I will stay amongst the children of Israel forever. For the house of Israel will not again degrade my holy name, they and their kings, by their whoredoms and the carcasses of their kings when dead, by placing their threshold by my threshold, and their doors by my doors, with only a wall between me and them, by which they degraded my holy name, by the depravities which they practiced. Therefore I consumed them in my anger. Now let them remove far from me their fornications and the carcasses of their kings, and I will stay amongst them forever. You, son of Adam, inform the house of Israel about this temple, and let them be ashamed of their vices, and let them restore its beauties. And if they are ashamed of all they have done, portray the temple and its form, and exits and entrances, and shape, and let them know its arrangements and ordinances, and draw them for their observation, and let them preserve all its plans, and all its arrangements and use. The foundations of the temple shall be the top of this hill. All round its circumference is sacred. These are the foundations, and these are the measurements of the altar by cubits, of a cubit and a handbreadth. The breast a cubit, and a cubit the breadth, with a border around of 7 inches, and the back of the altar the same. And from the breast of the ground to the lower landing 2 cubits, and the width 1 cubit, and from the lesser landing to the larger landing 4 cubits, and the breadth a cubit, and the hearth 4 cubits, with 4 horns rising up from the hearth. But the hearth shall be 12 long by 12 broad, a self-contained square. And the landing shall be 14 long by 14 broad, a perfect square, with a border around it of half a cubit, with a breastwork of a cubit around it, with a staircase facing the east.
Then he said to me,
Son of Adam, thus says the mighty Lord, these are the instructions for the altar, when they make it, to offer burnt offerings upon, and sprinkle blood upon. You shall provide for the priests of the Levites, who are of the family of Zadok, who approach to me, says the mighty Lord, to offer to me a bullock from the fold for consecration. And he shall take some of its blood, and put upon the 4 horns, and upon the 4 faces of the landings, and upon the surrounding enclosure and consecration, and consecrate it, and expiate for it. Then you shall take the consecrating bull, and burn it in the precincts of the temple, outside the sanctuary. And on the 2nd day you shall offer a perfect he-goat for consecration, and consecrate the altar as they consecrated with the bullock. When you have completed the consecration, offer a perfect bullock from the fold, and a perfect ram from the flock. Present them before the ever-living, when the priest shall scatter salt upon them, and offer them as a burnt offering to the ever-living. Do this for 7 days. Consecrate a goat daily, and a bullock from the fold, and a ram from the flock. Offer daily for 7 days, and expiate for the altar, and purify it, and fill its hands. When these days are completed, then upon the 8th day and forwards, let the priests offer upon the altar the burnt offerings and the peace offerings, and I will accept you, says the mighty Lord.
Chapter 44. He then returned with me to the outer gate of the sanctuary facing the east, but it was shut. The Lord said to me,
This gate shall be shut. It shall not be opened, and no one shall enter by it, for the ever-living, the God of Israel, has entered by it. Therefore it shall be shut. The prince of princes shall sit in it to eat bread before the ever-living. He can enter by the path of the porch gate and go out by the same path."
He afterwards took me to the north gate in front of the temple, when I looked and saw the temple full of the splendor of the life, and inclined my face downwards, when the Lord said to me,
"Son of Adam, fix your heart and observe with your eyes and listen with your ears to all that I may say to you, to all the rules of the ever-living's temple, and to all its forms. And fix in your mind the passages of the structure and all the gangways of the sanctuary, and tell the rebels of the house of Israel, 'Thus says the mighty Lord, you have added to yourselves beyond all your depravities, house of Israel, the bringing in of foreigners of filthy mind and filthy body to reside in my sanctuary, to defile my temple. And you allow them to present my bread and fat and blood, and break my covenant by all your depravities. You have also not guarded my sacred trusts, but have appointed guardians of my trusts from yourselves in my sanctuary. Thus says the mighty Lord, any son of a foreigner of filthy mind and filthy body shall not enter my sanctuary, or any son of a foreigner who resides amongst the children of Israel, for even the Levites who deserted from me in the desertion of Israel, when they deserted from me to follow idols, they shall bear their crime. They may, however, be appointed guards at the gates of my sanctuary, as guards of the gates of the temple, and guards of the temple. They may not, however, slay the burnt offerings and sacrifices for the people, or stand before them to administer, because they administered for them before the idols, and were a cause of sin to the house of Israel. Therefore I have lifted up my hand against them, the mighty Lord declared, and they shall bear their punishment, and not approach as priests to me, or approach to any of the sacred matters of the Holy of Holies, but shall suffer for the shame and depravity they have practiced. But I permit them to guard the trusts of the temple, in any of its services, or anything that is done for it. But the Levitical priests, the descendants of Zadok, who guarded the trusts of the sanctuary when the children of Israel deserted from me, they shall approach to me to administer, and stand before me to present the fat and the blood, the mighty Lord said. But when they arrive at the gates of the inner court, they must clothe in linen clothing, and no woolen must be on them, whilst they officiate in the inner court and the temple. They must wear linen turbans on their heads, and linen trousers on their loins. They shall not gird themselves in sweat. And when they proceed to the outer court of the people, they shall put off their official robes, and place them in the sacred vestry, and clothe in other robes, that they may not be worshipped by the people because of their robes. They must not shave their heads, and shall not cultivate curls. They must keep their heads tidy. Nor may any priest drink wine when going into the inner court. Nor may they marry widows or divorced women as their wives, but only a maiden of the race of the house of Israel, or marry a widow who is the widow of a priest. They must also instruct my people in the difference between holiness and defilement, and between corruption and purity. And in a dispute they shall stand to decide by my decrees, and decide it by my decrees and my laws and institutions, in every court they hold, and they must respect my appointments. And they shall not go and pollute themselves for the death of a man, but for a father or mother, or son or daughter, or brother or sister who has not a husband, they may pollute themselves. After it, however, they must seclude themselves for 7 days. Then on the day he enters into the inner court to officiate in the sanctuary, he shall offer for his own pollution, the mighty Lord commands. They shall, however, have an endowment. I will be their endowment, so a holding shall not be given to them in Israel. I will be their holding. They shall eat the food offerings, and the sin offerings, and trespass offerings, and everything dedicated in Israel shall be theirs, with the first product of all cattle of all kinds, and every offering of all kinds. From all of your offerings of every kind there shall be made offerings to the priests. You must also give the first fruits of your grain to the priests, to bring a blessing upon your house. The priests may not eat of any dead carcass, or what has been torn by bird or beast. Chapter 45. And when you allot the country into estates, you must give to the ever-living as a sanctification from the country a length of 25,000 rods long and 10,000 broad, which shall be sacred all around its borders. From this there shall be taken for the sanctuary a surface of 500 by 500, with 50 cubits round it for a suburb. So by this measurement measure a length of 25,000 and a breadth of 10,000, and the holiest sanctuary shall be in it. It shall be dedicated by the country to the priests who officiate in the sanctuary of the ever-living, and shall be a place for their homes, and be most sacred. And 25,000 rods long and 10,000 broad shall be assigned for the Levites who officiate in the temple, for them to hold as 20 residential towns. And give as township holdings 5,000 broad and 25,000 long. It must be alongside that consecrated by the parliament of the house of Israel. And assign to the prince on each side of the consecrated endowment, and of the township holdings on each side, at the front of the consecrated endowment, and at the front of the township holdings, on the western side westwards, and on the eastern side eastwards, and along each side of the estates, from the western boundary to the eastern boundary. That land shall be his estate in Israel, so that the princes may no more oppress my people, but they shall assign the country to the house of Israel by their tribes. Princes of Israel, says the mighty Lord, let this be enough for you. Reject oppression and violence, and practice the just and the right. Remove your confiscations from my people, says the mighty Lord. Let there be right scales, and right ephah, and a right bath. Let the ephah and the bath be proportionate, the bath to carry the 10th of a homer, and the ephah the 10th of a homer. Let the homer itself be the standard. And the shekel shall be 20 grains. Your manna shall be 25 shekels, and 20 shekels, and 5 shekels. And this is the taxation which shall be imposed: the 1/6 of an ephah from the homer of wheat, and the 1/6 of an ephah from the homer of barley, and the proportion from a bath of oil, the 10th of a bath from a cor, of 10 baths, that is a homer, because the baths are a homer. And 1 lamb out of a flock of 200 from the water meadows of Israel, for food offerings, and burnt offerings, and thank offerings, to expiate for them, the mighty Lord commands. All the population of the country shall be subject to this taxation to the prince of Israel, and it shall be incumbent upon the prince to provide the burnt offerings, and thank offerings, and drink offerings at the festivals, and months, and on the Sabbaths. And at all the assemblies of the house of Israel he shall provide the sin offerings, and the food offerings, and the thank offerings, to expiate for the parliament of the house of Israel. The mighty Lord commands thus: on the 1st of the 1st month you shall provide a perfect bullock from the fold, and purify the sanctuary. And the priest shall take some of the blood, and put upon the doorposts of the temple, and the 4 corners of the landing of the altar, and upon the posts of the gates of the inner court, and do the same on the 7th of the month, for general faults or errors, and expiate for them in the temple. At the beginning of the 14th day of the month you shall prepare yourselves for the feast of the Passover for 7 days, by eating unfermented bread. And the prince shall provide on that day, on account of himself and on account of the people of the country, a bullock for a sin offering. He shall also provide during the 7 days of the feast, as a burnt offering to the Lord, 7 perfect bullocks, and 7 rams a day, for 7 days, and as a sin offering, a he-goat daily, and as food offering he shall also provide an ephah for a bullock, and an ephah for a ram, and a hin of oil with the ephah. In the 7th month, on the 15th day, he shall provide the same for 7 days, similar sin offerings, similar burnt offerings, and similar food offerings, with similar oil. Chapter 46.
The mighty Lord said also,
The gate of the inner court facing the east shall be closed for 6 working days, but upon the day of rest it shall be opened, and upon the day of new moon. Then the prince shall come towards the porch outside the gate, and stand before the doors of the gate, while the priest prepares his burnt offering and his thank offering, and he shall bow at the threshold of the gate. He may afterwards enter, and the gate shall not be shut until the evening. But the people of the country shall worship in the square of the same gate before the Lord on the Sabbaths and new moons. And the burnt offerings that the prince shall present to the Lord on the day of rest are 6 perfect lambs and a perfect ram, with a food offering of an ephah with the ram, and with the lambs a food fixed by his own hand, and a hin of oil. And on the day of new moon a perfect bullock from the fold, and 6 lambs and a ram, they must be perfect. He shall also provide an ephah with the bullock, and an ephah with the ram as a food offering, and with the lambs whatever his hand suggests, and a hin of oil to the ephah. And when the prince arrives opposite the porch of the gate, he shall enter and leave by the same way. But when the people of the country come before the Lord of the assemblies, they must enter by the way of the north gate to the services, going out by the way of the south gate. But those arriving by way of the south gate shall go out by way of the north gate. They must not return by way of the gate they entered, but depart by the opposite one. But the princes shall enter, and as they depart, they shall depart by the same way. At the festivals, however, and at the assemblies, there shall be a food offering of an ephah with a bullock, and an ephah with a ram, and what his hand gives with the lambs, and a hin of oil with an ephah. But when the prince makes a vow of a burnt offering, or has vowed a thank offering to the ever-living, you shall open the gate facing the east for him, and he shall provide the burnt offering or the thank offerings as he provides on the Sabbath day. Then he shall depart, and close the gate after him at his departure. And he shall provide daily as a burnt offering to the ever-living a perfect lamb of a year old. It shall be provided morning by morning, and you shall provide with it morning by morning 1/6 of an ephah and 1/3 of a hin of oil to mix the fine flour of the food offering to the ever-living as a regular rule forever. They shall thus provide the lamb and the food offering and the oil morning by morning as a regular burnt offering.
The mighty Lord also said,
If the prince gives some of his inheritance as a gift to anyone amongst his sons, it shall belong to his sons. They shall hold it as an estate. But if he gives a gift from his property to one of his ministers, it shall only be his until the year of release, then return to the prince, because his estate is for his children, and shall come to them. The prince, however, shall not seize any estate from the people to deprive them of their property, but his children shall inherit his own property. Therefore he shall not tear away from my people their possessions.
He then took me through the passage at the side of the gate of the sleeping rooms, reserved for the priests, facing the north, and I noticed there a space at the back, towards the west. He then said to me,
That is the place where the priests must boil the trespass and sin offerings, where they must bake the food offering without going to the outer court to inconvenience the people.
He next took me to the outer court, and went with me to the 4 corners of the court, and I perceived a court at each corner of the court. And to the 4 corners of the court, courts were attached, of 40 long and 30 broad. They were the same measure at each of the 4 corners. And there was a colonnade round them, with boilers fixed around under the colonnade. Then he said to me,
In this boiler house the officials of the temple shall boil the sacrifices of the people. Chapter 47.
Then he took me back into the entrance of the temple, and I perceived water issuing from under the entrance of the temple eastwards, for the front of the temple was towards the east, and the waters descended from under the right side of the temple, on the south of the altar. Then he led me towards the north gate, and took me round by the way outside the gate along the road that faces eastward, and I observed the waters trickling from the right side, as the man went eastward with the line in his hand, and measured 1,000 cubits. Then he passed me through the waters, the increasing waters. He measured 1,000 again, and passed me through the waters, waters up to the knees. Then he measured another 1,000, and passed me through water to the waist. Again he measured 1,000 of a river that I could not pass through. The waters had risen to a swimming river that could not be forded. He then asked me, Son of man, have you seen? And brought me back to the bank of the river. On my return I perceived a very great forest on both sides of the river, and he said to me, These waters will come out from Galilee to flow towards the east, and will run down over the burnt desert, and arrive at the sea of the corrupted, and will purify that sea. And it will become a perfect living life, which will be productive in all to whom it may come. There shall be 2 living rivers, and they shall have very many fish when these waters have come there, for they will restore to health and life all who come there to the river. Fishermen also will be stationing themselves beside it from Gedidy to Eglaim, casting their nets. There will be very many fish of every kind, like the fish of the great sea, but its marshes and fens will not be rectified, they will be abandoned to salt. And by the river up to its banks on both sides, every kind of fruit tree will spring up with unfading foliage and unfailing fruit, produced monthly, for the waters proceed from the sanctuary, and the fruit will feed, and the foliage restore to health. Thus says the mighty Lord, You shall divide the country into estates within these boundaries to the 12 tribes of Israel. To Joseph 2 districts, and the others each equal to their brothers, since I have lifted up my hand to give it to your ancestors, you shall allot the country thus to yourselves by districts. And this shall be the boundary of the country on the northern side. From the great sea towards Hathlon to the path of Zedad, Hamath, Berotha, Sibraim, which is between the border of Damascus and the border of Ramath, Khazar in the nook on the pass of Hamram, and the boundary farthest from the sea shall be Hazar Ammon upon the borders of Damascus to the north of the border of Hamath. That shall be the north boundary. And the eastern side shall be from between Horan and Damascus, and Gilad, with the Jordan between the land of Israel. Measure for the border to the east of the lake of the Cadmonites. That is the eastern side. And south side, on the right hand, from Tamar to the dividing brook of Kadesh, that flows to the great sea. This is the right-hand side to the south. And the west side shall be the great sea, from the border stretching to the pass of Hamath. That is the west side. And you shall divide this country for yourselves amongst the tribes of Israel. And you shall divide it into districts for yourself by lot, and for the foreigners who reside amongst you, who have begotten children amongst you. For they shall be the same as the natives of the sons of Israel. They shall be allotted properties amongst the tribes of Israel. And in the tribe where the foreigner resides, his estate shall be given. The mighty Lord commands this. Chapter 48. Now this is the muster roll of the tribes. From the north end at the side of the Hethlon road to the pass of Hamath at Khazar Ammon on the border of Damascus northward towards the side of Hamath, they shall face east and west. Dan first, and the border of Dan shall face east and west. Dan 1. And on the border of Dan facing east and west, Ashur 1. And on the border of Ashur facing east and west, Naphtali 1. And on the border of Naphtali facing east and west, Manasseh 1. And on the border of Manasseh facing east and west, Ephraim 1. And on the border of Ephraim facing east and west, Reuben 1. And on the border of Reuben facing east and west, Judah 1. And on the border of Judah facing east and west, there shall be the grant which you must grant of 25,000 rods broad, and the length the same as the portion from east to west, and the sanctuary shall be the center of the grant that you grant to the ever-living, of 25,000 long and 10,000 broad. And alongside this shall be the sacred grant for the priests.
On the north 25,000 reeds long, on the west 10,000 broad, and on the east 10,000, and on the south 25,000 long. And it shall be consecrated to the ever-living amongst you, for the consecrated priests of the descendants of Zadok, who guarded my trusts, who did not revolt to the depravities of the children of Israel when the Levites revolted. Consequently, the boundaries of the grant, granted from the land, shall be most sacred to you. And alongside the borders of the priests, there shall be for the Levites 25,000 reeds long, and 10,000 broad. All the length shall be 25,000, and the breadth 10,000, and they shall not sell it from themselves, nor exchange nor transfer the firstfruits of the land, for it is consecrated to the ever-living. And 5,000 reeds in breadth shall be left in the front of the 25,000. It shall be as common to build villages, and for pasture, and with a town in the center, whose measurements shall be these: the north face 4,500, and the south face 4,500, and the eastern face 4,500, and the western face 4,500. There shall also be suburbs for the town towards the north 250, and on the south 250, and on the east 250, and on the west 250. And the remainder of the length alongside the consecrated grant of 2,000 eastward and 10,000 westward, that is connected with the consecrated grant, its products shall be for the police expenses of the city, and the police of the city from all the tribes of Israel shall cultivate it. The whole that is consecrated shall be a square of 25,000 by 25,000. You shall assign the sacred grants with the holdings for the city. And the portion for the prince shall be on each side of the sacred grant, and of the holdings for the city, on the front of the grant of 25,000 from the eastern border, and on the opposite western face 25,000 adjoining the grant for the prince, shall be the sacred offering, and the sanctuary of the temple shall be in its center. However, the holdings of the Levites and the holdings for the city shall be in the center of what belongs to the prince. What is between the borders of Judah and the borders of Benjamin shall also belong to the prince. And for the rest of the tribes facing from east to west, Benjamin 1. And on the border of Benjamin facing east to west, Simeon 1. And on the border of Simeon facing east to west, Issachar 1. And on the border of Issachar facing east to west, Zebulun 1. And on the border of Zebulun facing east and west, Gad 1. And on the border of Gad, on the south, towards the right hand, the border shall be from Tamar on the brook dividing the vale of Kadesh to the great sea. This is the country you shall divide into districts for the tribes of Israel, and these are their portions, said the mighty Lord. And these shall be the dimensions of the city. The north side, an extent of 4,500, with gates to the city, bearing the names of the tribes of Israel. 3 gates on the north: the gate of Reuben 1, the gate of Judah 1, the gate of Levi 1. And the eastern face 4,500, with 3 gates: the gate of Joseph 1, the gate of Benjamin 1, the gate of Dan 1. And the southern face 4,500, in extent, with 3 gates: the gate of Simeon 1, the gate of Issachar 1, the gate of Zebulun 1. The western face 4,500, with its 3 gates: the gate of Gad 1, the gate of Ashur 1, the gate of Naphtali 1. It will thus be 18,000 in circuit. And from that day, the name of the city, the Lord's Home. The end of chapters 43 through 48, and the end of the book of Ezekiel, from the Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. Recording by Mark Penfold.